Chapter 102. I am my daughter. Rong Tianling had been holding Yun Lan by the side to express his anger. When he turned around and saw Rong Yuehong on Yun Ruoyan's back, he didn't know what was going on and he rushed over. By the time Rong Tianling arrived, Rong Yuehong had already been dragged off Yun Ruoyan's back. Then Rong Yuehong collapsed to the ground, blood spurting out of her mouth. All she could do was gasp for air. However, her eyes were still fixed on Yun Ruoyan. Rong Tianling hugged the lifeless Rong Yuehong in his arms and sobbed for a while. Then he suddenly raised his head and looked at Yun Ruoyan with a pair of ox-like eyes. Yun Ruoyan, what did you do to kill my daughter? I won't let you off. What do you mean, Elder Rong? The Yun matriarch walked over with Xiaolan's help and blocked Yun Ruoyan's path. Everyone saw it in public. It was clearly your daughter who suddenly attacked Ruoyan's back, but our Ruoyan didn't even retaliate. Rong Tianling hadn't witnessed the entire incident, and he wasn't convinced by the Yun matriarch's words. Yuehong ate a high-grade spiritual pill that can prolong her life, and the physician said that she could live for another 3 to 5 years as long as she recuperates properly. Why did she suddenly die? Yun Ruoyan must have done something to her. Elder Rong, I've given in to you over and over again, but the Yun family isn't someone you can harm as you please. Yun Lan also stood by Yun Ruoyan's side, but after he finished speaking he turned back to look at Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan could clearly see the suspicion in his eyes. Grandmother, I really didn't do anything. Yun Ruoyan hid behind the Yun matriarch's back, one hand covering her face and the other clutching the Yun matriarch's robe. The Yun matriarch patted her hand. Don't be afraid. Then tell Xiaolan to pick up the veil and put it back on for Yun Ruoyan. Then the Yun matriarch turned to Rong Tianling with a pair of murky yellow eyes. Everyone saw how your daughter died. Are you going to blame it on Ruoyan? The onlookers sighed at Rong Yuehong's sudden death. Did you see how Miss Rong died just now? Was it Miss Yun who did it? Someone asked. No, Miss Rong suddenly fell ill and died, someone replied. Yes, I saw it too. She suddenly went crazy on Miss Yun's back and scratched Miss Yun's face. After she was pulled off, she vomited blood and died. That Miss Rong doesn't look like she's going to live much longer. She must have deliberately brought her to the Yun family to seek misfortune. Miss Yun of the Yun family is also a dignified daughter of the first wife. She carried it without hesitation. I didn't expect Miss Rong to still be so domineering even after being reduced to such a state. From the looks of it, she must have wanted to launch a sudden attack, but in the end her body couldn't take it and she died. That's right, he died because his blood and qi attacked his heart, yet he still wants to blame Miss Yun. That's too much. Official Yun is an amiable person, or else he'd surely report this to the emperor himself. Many of the onlookers had been bullied by Rong Tianling in the past, and they were immediately enraged by this scene. Someone boldly shouted, Uncle Rong, Miss Rong has already passed away. My condolences, please hurry back to the manor and make arrangements so that Miss Rong can rest in peace. That's right. What's the point of holding such a joyous occasion? Rong Tianling's face alternated between red and green as he listened to the almost one-sided discussion of his daughter's death. He could only feel that the evil aura that was stuck in his heart was expanding. Finally, he could not hold it in any longer and his anger exploded. Rong Tianling clawed at Yun Ruoyan with both hands. In that instant, Yun Ruoyan saw a small ball of white light in his palms. That was spiritual energy leaking out of his body, and she knew that Rong Tianling's cultivation had reached the level of an early 9th rank blade master. Yun Ruoyan was a peak 7th rank blade master, but the spiritual energy that she could release from her body was only a small ball of white light. On the other hand, Rong Tianling's spiritual energy was already the size of an egg. From this, it was clear just how much of a gap there was between their cultivations. Grandmother, be careful. Yun Ruoyan knew that Rong Tianling's palm was aimed at her, and at a time like this, she couldn't afford to hide behind an old woman. As a result, she stepped forward and shielded the Yun matriarch. Yun Ruoyan spread out her arms to protect the Yun matriarch. Rong Tianling's powerful palm blew away the veil that she had just put on. Yun Ruoyan closed her eyes. You dare harm a member of the Yun family. Just then Yun Lan's voice rang out, followed by the sound of spiritual energy colliding with each other. The shockwaves from the clash of spiritual energies hit Yun Ruoyan's face, causing her skin to hurt. She shut her eyes tightly as she listened to the shocked cries of the crowd. Only when the shockwaves dissipated did Yun Ruoyan open her eyes. Yunlon was standing in front of her, his back ramrod straight. In that instant he gave Yun Ruoyan a feeling that she had never felt before. Rong Tianling, on the other hand, stood off to the side, his face pale. It was clear that he hadn't gained the upper hand against Yunlon. The dignified imperial uncle actually carried out a sneak attack, and the targets of the sneak attack were old people and young women. What a disgrace to the royal family. That's right, what a shame. Without waiting for Yunlon to reprimand him, the surrounding people began to mock him one after another. Li Qianxiao was currently crouching behind Li Qianyuan, afraid that Rong Tianling would accidentally see him and pull him out. That would truly be a huge embarrassment for him. Although this uncle of his had a high level of cultivation, his behavior was so unreasonable that even he, the crown prince, could not stand it. There was also his cousin Rong Yuehong, who was a carbon copy of Rong Tianling. Instead of staying at home to recuperate, she had come out to embarrass herself. She deserved to lose her life. Second brother. Li Qianxiao called out to Li Qianyuan. There's another path to the west. Let's go there and enter the Yun Manor. Li Qianxiao narrowed his eyes as he looked at Yun Ruoyan, who was still standing in front of the Yun matriarch. When he heard Li Qianxiao call out to him, Li Qianyuan seemed to be talking to himself but also to Li Qianxiao. As expected, she's not simple. What's not simple? Li Qianxiao didn't understand what Li Qianyuan meant. Li Qianyuan continued, that Yun Ruoyan really isn't a simple character. Not simple? She's frightening. Wait, the birthmark on her face doesn't seem as big as before. Only then did Li Qianxiao turn his attention to Yun Ruoyan's face. Yun Ruoyan had been cultivating and accompanying the Yun matriarch these past few days, and she hadn't had enough sleep at all. In order to save time and make it cooler, she used less medicinal powder when she made the fake birthmark, and the medicinal paste was thinner. The result was that the birthmark became smaller and lighter. It wasn't as scary as before. Yun Ruoyan felt that no one would be able to see it under the thin veil, and even if they did, no one would pay attention to such an eyesore. Earlier, when Rong Yuehong had removed her veil, Yun Ruoyan had cautiously covered the right side of her face. Everyone knew that she had a birthmark, so they didn't pay much attention to it. But today, a meticulous fellow had appeared in the crowd. Oh, it's much smaller. Li Qianxiao looked even more closely after Li Qianyuan's reminder, and his tone finally revealed a hint of surprise. He remembered that Yun Ruoyan had said that the birthmark would slowly disappear after using the medicine. At first, Li Qianxiao had thought that Yun Ruoyan was lying to him, but it turned out to be true. He couldn't help but regret his actions. By then, Rong Tianling had finally calmed his spiritual vortex. Not bad, Yunlon. You've managed to cultivate so much spiritual energy without anyone noticing. Yunlon was a civil official who rarely fought with others, but his cultivation wasn't low. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to establish himself in the Li Kingdom, which valued martial arts more than literature. Much to Rong Tianling's surprise, he was already a mid-stage 9th-rank blade master. Humph. Yunlon snorted. Uncle Rong, if you want to compete, I'm more than happy to oblige. However, today is my mother's birthday, so please take your daughter and leave. Whether it's right or wrong, we'll settle it in front of His Majesty another day. Yunlon was a shrewd man, and before his promotion he had been very subservient to Rong Tianling. As a result, Rong Tianling had never thought much of him. Who would have thought that he would be defeated by Yunlon today? If he had lost in any other aspect, Rong Tianling might have been able to act arrogantly, but he had lost in cultivation. I have nothing to say about my lack of skill, but I won't let this matter rest. Rong Tianling finally left the Yun Manor with Rong Yuehong's corpse in his arms. My apologies, everyone. After Rong Tianling left, Yunlon cupped his hands and apologized to the crowd. I'm sorry to have disturbed your mood. Official Yun, don't be so polite. Please get back to work and don't miss the auspicious time for the banquet. Everyone nodded in agreement, expressing their understanding. Then, according to the arrangements, they orderly entered the Yun family to offer their blessings. When the Yun matriarch returned to the Yun Manor, she didn't return to her quarters. Instead, she sat at the head of the main hall, holding Yun Ruoyan's hand the entire time. Ruoyan, let me see if you're hurt anywhere. The Yun matriarch looked Yun Ruoyan up and down. Yun Ruoyan had risked her life to shield her, and the Yun matriarch was quite touched. I'm fine, grandmother. Yun Ruoyan smiled. There's just a scratch on my face, but it's covered by my veil. Good girl. The Yun matriarch looked at Yun Ruoyan, her eyes a mixture of guilt and curiosity. Just now your father and I asked you to carry Rong Yuehong. Do you blame us for that? Not only were the Yun matriarch's eyes bright but her heart as well. The slight change in Yun Ruoyan's expression just before she said that she would carry Rong Yuehong didn't escape her grandmother's eyes. To tell you the truth, grandmother, I didn't want to carry Rong Yuehong, but I couldn't disobey father and grandmother's orders. Yun Ruoyan didn't expect the Yun matriarch to ask such a question. After thinking for a moment she replied, but when I was in real danger, you stood in front of me and protected me. It's clear that father and grandmother still dote on me, so I don't blame you anymore. Chapter 103. Don't you resent me? How could this be? However, Ruoyan had been reborn with a great deal of resentment, and this little bit of resentment was insignificant compared to the resentment she had suppressed in her heart. Moreover, she knew that the Yun matriarch and Yun Lan wouldn't hesitate to abandon her for the sake of the family. Although she would still mock him in her heart, she would not be surprised or hurt. Perhaps because of her efforts during this period of time, her position in the hearts of the Luxia and Yun Lan had improved, but compared to the family she was still insignificant. She was just a daughter that could be used and sacrificed. At most they would feel a little guilty after abandoning her. She was well aware that resentment wouldn't bring her anything useful, and Rong Yuehong was a good example of what she could do to avoid it. Only by turning resentment into motivation and cultivating enough power, to the point where no one was qualified to control you, would you be able to get rid of the shackles and obtain true freedom. Good girl. The Yun matriarch reached out to tidy up Yun Ruoyan's hair. Yun Ruoyao, Yun Ruoyu, Yi Qianying, and the other scions of the Yun matriarch were also standing not far from her. Seeing how much the Yun matriarch doted on Yun Ruoyan, all three of them had complicated expressions. On the way to the Yun manor, the three of them were almost certain that Rong Yuehong had been killed by Yun Ruoyan's sorcery. Because of Rong Yuehong's death, the conflict between the two sides had escalated. Even as Rong Tianling pointed his spear at Yun Ruoyan, the Yun matriarch and Yun Lan unhesitatingly stepped forward to protect Yun Ruoyan. In the past, Yun Ruoyan's fate would have been tragic. But now she was being pitted by the Yun matriarch. This demon is truly incredible. Grandmother and father have already been bewitched by her. If we don't get rid of this demon, the Yun family won't be able to live in peace. Why isn't mother here yet? Didn't she say that she had already arranged for people to come and kill the demon? The three of them had their own plans, but the contents of their plans were all the same. Even the way they anxiously stretched out their heads to look outside was identical. May the old madam live 10,000 years. At that moment, Crown Prince Li Qianxia walked into the hall and bowed to the Yun matriarch. Your Highness, the Crown Prince is too polite. Yun Shi quickly got up and returned the greeting. You're the birthday boy today, so you don't have to be so polite. Please sit down. No matter what Li Qianxiao's personality was like, his years as a crown prince had taught him proper etiquette. I'm here today to offer my well wishes, so there's no need to stand on ceremony. The crowd had been about to bow, but Li Qianxiao's words dissuaded them. Li Qianxiao was dressed in a light purple robe with a jade crown on his head. His face was handsome and his lips were curled into a smile. Yet another handsome young master. He was no longer in a sorry state like he was that night in the greenhouse. Your Highness, Crown Prince. Yun Ruoyan had no choice but to bow when she saw Li Qianxiao staring at her. Ruoyan, you don't have to be so polite. Li Qianxiao stepped forward, smiling as he reached out to help Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan didn't know whether Li Qianxiao had mistakenly thought that the birthmark on her face had healed or that he was once again attracted to her beauty. Yun Ruoyan only felt that it was strange. She had clearly managed to scare him. That day at the flower viewing party, the crown prince hadn't even dared to look at her, and there had been almost no interaction at all. Had he taken the wrong medicine today? While Yun Ruoyan was still in a daze, Li Qianxiao's hand was already on her arm. She hurriedly took a step back, disgust flashing across her face. Yun Ruoyu nudged Yi Qianying with her elbow, gesturing for her to look. Yi Qianying glanced coolly at Li Qianxiao before lowering her head once more, as if this matter had nothing to do with her. Yun Ruoyu frowned slightly, dissatisfied with Yi Qianying's indifference. From the moment Li Qianxiao had walked through the door, Yun Ruoyu's gaze had been on him. When she saw how attentive Li Qianxiao was to Yun Ruoyan, she couldn't help but think that Yun Ruoyan was trying to seduce her brother again. However, it wasn't convenient for her to remind him, so she wanted Yi Qianying to speak to him. Unexpectedly, Yi Qianying didn't seem to care at all. Crown Prince, since your engagement with Qianying has already been decided, you should come to the Yun household more often and cultivate your relationship with her, the Yun matriarch said casually. Li Qianxiao glanced at Yi Qianying, who was standing to the side with her head lowered, and he couldn't help but feel annoyed. To him, a woman who was already in his hands was like a vegetable that had been overcooked. Of course, Li Qianxiao wouldn't let his disgust show on his face. Madam, you're right. I'll definitely come to the Yun household more often in the future. Coming to the Yun household was a must, but it was up to him, the crown prince, to cultivate his relationship with whoever he wanted. After all, Yi Qianying was only a concubine, and even if he were to leave the position of concubine to the Yun family, Yun Lan wouldn't refuse. As long as she didn't have that ugly birthmark on her face, Yun Ruoyan's appearance, demeanor, strength and status would be all to Li Qianxiao's liking. She was truly the best candidate for the crown prince's concubine. Haha. Behind Li Qianxiao, a young man wearing a light green robe and holding a folding fan chuckled and bowed deeply to the Yun matriarch. Madam, Qianyuan wishes you a happy birthday. The Yun matriarch narrowed her eyes at the young man and her smile deepened. Oh, second prince, when did you return? I only returned yesterday and I managed to rush back just in time for your birthday. Li Qianyuan walked up to the Yun matriarch and spoke with great familiarity. This was Yun Ruoyan's first time meeting Li Qianyuan, and she couldn't help but take a second look at him. He looked a lot like the Emperor Li Xiu, especially his long narrow eyes. But unlike Li Xiu, Li Qianyuan had a feminine air about him. Perhaps it was because he had been heavily influenced by women as he grew up, and his actions and expressions were subconsciously feminine. As long as he didn't go overboard, he wasn't annoying at all. Li Qianyuan took a rectangular box from one of his attendants and handed it to the Yun matriarch. Here's a gift for you. He slowly opened the box in front of the Yun matriarch, revealing a sparkling snow-white scepter. The Yun matriarch's fondness for scepters was well known, and Yun Ruoyan's gift this time was a brocade quilt embroidered with a scepter in the shape of the god of longevity hugging the scepter. But in front of this jade scepter that was half a foot long and made of some unknown material, it paled in comparison. Li Qianyuan gently picked up the scepter and handed it to the Yun matriarch. Madam, see if you like the gift I've prepared for you. The Yun matriarch held the scepter in her hands. It felt as warm and smooth as jade, but it wasn't jade, and it felt cool and refreshing to the touch. The Yun matriarch looked at Li Qianyuan in surprise. Is this a pearl? But aren't pearls round? The crowd was also surprised by the Yun matriarch's words. Even Yi Qianying, who had been hanging her head like a dead chicken, craned her neck to look at the scepter. You have a good eye, madam. Li Qianyuan slapped his folding fan against the palm of his other hand, looking very happy. While I was in the Qin kingdom, I caught a giant mussel spirit on my way out to sea, and I had someone place a jade scepter into the mussel's stomach. A year later I took it out and it turned out to be a pearl scepter. Oh, how precious. Thank you, second prince. The Yun matriarch immediately beamed like a chrysanthemum. Of course, Li Qianyuan replied. Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected the Yun matriarch to be so close to Li Qianyuan. In her past life, Yun Ruoyan and the Yun matriarch hadn't been close at all. On her 80th birthday, Yun Ruoyan had only shown her face once before hiding in a corner. She had no idea what had happened or who had been present. Li Qianyuan could feel Yun Ruoyan looking at him, and he looked back at her. His long, narrow eyes flashed, and Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but shiver. By the time Yun Ruoyan reacted, his eyes were full of smiles. Yun Ruoyan only hesitated for a moment before returning his smile. After exchanging greetings, Li Qianxiao and Li Qianyuan left to talk to the other officials, while the Yun matriarch sent the scions of the family out to play. In the end, only Yun Ruoyan, Yun Ruoyao, Yun Ruoyu, and Yi Qianying were left to accompany the Yun matriarch. To Yun Ruoyao, staying by the Yun matriarch's side was the safest option, while the other three had to stay by Yun Ruoyan's side to prevent her from escaping before Madame and made her move. As noon approached, more people arrived. Feeling that the hall was too noisy, the Yun matriarch retired to a side hall to rest, and the four of them followed her. Just as the Yun matriarch sat down on a soft couch, Pei Zhou suddenly walked in. Once again Pei Zhou presented a steel rui scepter, much more exquisite than the one he had given the Yun matriarch. However, with Li Qinyuan's pearl scepter, the Yun matriarch was no longer interested in his. The Yun matriarch couldn't even be bothered to look at it. She ordered Xiao Lan to accept it, then exchanged a few pleasantries with Pei Zhou. Pei Zhou said that it wasn't convenient for Pei Yingxiong to enter the hall, so he had come on his father's behalf to pay his respects to the Yun matriarch. These two pleasantries brightened the Yun matriarch's mood. As Pei Zhou spoke, he glanced at Yun Ruoyan from time to time. Yun Ruoyan guessed that he had something to say to her, but she ignored him. Ever since they had returned from the flower viewing party, Pei Zhou had sent for Yun Ruoyan several times, informing her that the tiger canine arrowheads had been completed, but that Yun Ruoyan had to personally retrieve them from the Pei Manor. Yun Ruoyan knew that Pei Yingxiong and Pei Yingxiong must have concluded that she didn't dare to reveal the secret of the Thousand Beast Valley. After all, the secret was so important to the imperial family that revealing it would be tantamount to telling the emperor. She also knew that if the Pei family were to suffer, Yun Ruoyan wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. Actually, Pei Yingxiong had thought of this from the very beginning, but he didn't dare to take the risk, which was why he had asked Pei Zhou to calm Yun Ruoyan down. Now that he was certain of this, he was no longer afraid. Yun Ruoyan, on the other hand, didn't want to step into the Pei Manor. She had plenty of ways to get Pei Zhou or even Pei Yingxiong to personally deliver what she wanted to her, but she didn't have the time to greet them right now. Yun Ruoyan glanced at her three cousins. Although they were trying their best to maintain their composure, the minute movements they made didn't escape Yun Ruoyan's eyes. Since Yun Ruoyan thought that she would be able to completely trip her up, how could she not play along and put on a good show for him? Chapter 104. Coincidentally, on the day that Yun Ruoyan left her quarters with the fox pelt, she bumped into Xilan and Ling Lan on her way to her quarters. The two of them were on their way to the storehouse to collect the silk needed for a quilt. The three of them joked around with each other for a while. Not long after, when Xilan and Ling Lan returned to Yun Ruoyan's quarters with the silk, they happened to see the spiritual master leaving along the path that Yun Ruoyan had taken. Xilan didn't pay much attention, but Ling Lan did. Because she was often summoned by Madame and for questioning, she was very familiar with the area around Yun Ruoyan's quarters. She knew that the path led to her quarters and she was a little puzzled. Why had a Taoist priest followed the young miss out of her quarters so soon after she left? The young miss had only mentioned that Madame and had mysteriously given her a fox pelt, and that the young miss had instructed them to take it back with them. She hadn't mentioned a Taoist priest at all. After returning to Yun Ruoyan's quarters, Ling Lan immediately reported the matter to Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan was also curious. When she had been speaking with Madame and outside, she had sensed that there was someone in the room, but she had assumed that it was just a servant. After hearing Ling Lan's report, she was certain that the person in the room wasn't a servant, but rather the Taoist priest that Ling Lan had seen. Even now, Yun Ruoyan still hadn't figured out why Madame and would bring a Taoist priest with her. Although she was confused, she didn't dwell on it. When she returned to the Lin Manor, she brought the fox pelt and the bottle of wine that Ling Lan had given her. When Lin Qingxian saw the fox pelt, she was certain that it was actually the pelt of a fox with some spiritual energy, and that it was quite valuable. Not only humans but all living things in this world could absorb the spiritual energy of the world and the essence of the sun and moon to cultivate their own spiritual energy. With spiritual energy they would become spiritual foxes, and the pelt of spiritual foxes was naturally far superior to that of ordinary foxes. When Lin Qingxian heard that the pelt had been given to her by Madame N, she also felt that there had to be a hidden agenda behind the Taoist priest's attentiveness. Lin Qingxian sniffed the bottle of wine and could immediately tell that it was Realgar wine. Realgar wine wasn't a common beverage, and only demon hunters had a secret recipe for it. It wasn't sold in the market and one had to pay a high price to buy it from a demon hunter. Ordinary people might have only heard of Realgar wine in their entire lives, but they had never tasted it. In short, it was very precious. This was the first time Yun Ruoyan had seen such a wine. Lin Qingxian told Yun Ruoyan that Realgar wine had the effect of boosting one's sex drive and warding off evil spirits. Even if consumed in small amounts, it could strengthen one's body. But why would Madame N allow Ling Lan to put such a precious Realgar wine into her food? He couldn't possibly be thinking of treating her well silently, right? I'm going to subdue you like a monster. Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingchen didn't react for a moment, but Lin Qingxue called out from the side. Although the two older sisters ignored her, Lin Qingxue heard every word of their conversation clearly. Lin Qingxue loved to listen to stories about demons and monsters, and would often pester Lin Zainin and Uncle Lin to tell her about them. The storyteller in the tea house who specialized in capturing demons and monsters was an old friend of hers. As a result, Lin Qingxue was far more knowledgeable about these matters than either of her sisters. Combining all the stories she had heard about hunting beasts, Lin Qingxue was able to quickly deduce what had happened. Sister Ruan, your stepmother must have thought that you were possessed by a fox demon, Lin Qingxue explained. First, she sent a servant to put realgar wine in your food in an attempt to make you reveal your true form, but to no avail. She hired an old Taoist priest to subdue you. The fox skin was used to intimidate you, and the old Taoist priest hid it to observe your cultivation so that he could come up with a plan to deal with you. Lin Qingxue's explanation enlightened the two sisters. When Yun Ruoyan thought back to Madame Anne's attitude toward her, she confirmed Lin Qingxue's explanation. Based on Yun Ruoyan's understanding of Madame Anne, if she wanted to subdue her as a monster, she would definitely choose to do so in public, and the Yun matriarch's birthday would be the best opportunity. Even after learning of Madame Anne's scheme, Yun Ruoyan wasn't worried. Although she had been reborn as a vengeful ghost, she had nothing to do with demons. No matter how powerful a demon hunter Madame Anne hired, it would all be a joke. However, there were always exceptions to everything in this world, and the spiritual master was one such exception. Not only could the spiritual master tell that Yun Ruoyan wasn't a demon, but that she was a human furnace that only appeared once in 1,000 years, and he wanted to take her for himself. In a room not far from the main hall, the spiritual master was a little anxious. He had long wanted to subdue Yun Ruoyan and find a place to cultivate. Don't worry, spiritual master, the auspicious hour is almost here, Madame Anne consoled. When the auspicious hour arrives, you can subdue that demon in front of everyone. Wouldn't it be better to have both her and her name? She's not a demon, the spiritual master corrected. Not only is she not a demon, she's a rare beauty. As the spiritual master said this, his eyes narrowed slightly, as if he were fantasizing about something wonderful. Madame Anne's heart was already filled with disdain for this sanctimonious old man, but she still maintained a respectful facade. Spiritual master, if she's not a demon, how are you going to subdue her in front of everyone? This was what Madame Anne was worried about. The spiritual master didn't respond. Instead, he waved at Madame Anne with a strange smile. Suddenly, Madame Anne saw a fox scurry out of his robes. Its entire body was a fiery red, and it looked very much like the fox pelt she had given Yun Ruoyan that day. As soon as the fox appeared, it clawed at Madame Anne's face, causing her to scream and kneel on the ground. Spiritual master, save me. The fox demon is coming for me. Madame Anne covered her face as she screamed. The spiritual master smiled. Don't be afraid, madam. That's just a small trick of mine. It won't hurt you. Madame Anne slowly removed her hand, but the fox was nowhere to be seen. Where's the fox? Madame Anne looked around. The spiritual master shrugged. There's no fox and there's no demon. However, I can conjure up a fox and I can turn a normal person into a demon. 800 miles outside the capital, a few flaming steeds were galloping, their riders all dressed in black. Your Highness, you're injured and you shouldn't use spiritual energy. Seeing that he was about to miss the Yun family's birthday banquet, Liu Mo was about to fly on his sword when a black-robed man by his side stopped him. That's right, Your Highness, it's just a birthday banquet. It's fine to be late, another black-robed man added. Liu Mo looked in the direction of the capital, his ice-blue eyes narrowed. Li Mo's dantian had been shaken, and his spiritual vortex was in turmoil from the last few days of travel. If he were to use spiritual energy recklessly, his injuries would likely worsen. It would be best if he could find a place to rest, but he had an ominous premonition. He didn't expect that the old witch would choose to self-destruct and perish together with him after telling him what he wanted to know. Fortunately, he had moved quickly enough to leave in time and he had only been shaken. The two black-robed guards who had entered the cottage with him weren't so lucky. Yun Lan was still standing outside the Yun Manor. It was already past noon and almost all of the guests had arrived. All that was left was for the auspicious hour to begin the banquet. Master, the auspicious hour is almost upon us. Please make your preparations, old Wu urged as he walked out of the manor. Yunlong waved a hand, ignoring him, and continued to wait. After a while Yunfeng walked out. Brother, the auspicious hour is almost here. Why are you still here? The slaughtering king isn't here yet, Yunlong replied. Did the slaughtering king say that he'd definitely come? Yunlong nodded. I met the slaughtering king in the palace after morning court. He asked about my mother's birthday, so I personally delivered an invitation to the slaughtering king's manor. The slaughtering king personally accepted the invitation and said that he'd definitely come. Why isn't he here yet? It's not like you don't know the slaughtering king's personality. Even if he says he'll come, he might not. Yunfeng continued, Brother, you should hurry in. Mother's already seated and she's waiting for you to lead the way. Don't delay the auspicious hour. The Li Kingdom had its own set of etiquettes, and they naturally had their own set of etiquettes. Children and grandchildren were to be led by the highest-ranking member of the family and kowtow to the person of the birthday in front of all the guests at the auspicious hour. The auspicious hour was when the person of the birthday was born, and the Yun matriarch was born in the afternoon. Yunlong glanced at the sun above his head and said helplessly, Let's go in. The large hall was packed with guests. The Yun matriarch sat at the head of the table, and her children and grandchildren stood below her in accordance with their seniority. The Yun matriarch had a total of 7 children. Her eldest daughter had already passed away, and her 2 concubine daughters had been married off to the Yu kingdom and the Qin kingdom. Madame An stood in the first row. In the second row were her 2 concubine sons and their daughters-in-law. Yun Ruoyan was the only grandchild, and Yun Maxiao's seat was empty. Below Yun Ruoyan stood Yun Ruoyao, Yun Ruoyu, and a dozen or so concubine grandchildren. Because Yi Qianying wasn't a member of the Yun family, she could only blend in with the concubine children. Yun Ruoyan glanced at the empty seat beside her. In her past life, Yun Maxiao hadn't returned for the Yun matriarch's birthday either. Although the events of this life were roughly the same as in her past life, many of the details were different. Yun Ruoyan's change had caused many changes. As a result, Yun Ruoyan wasn't sure whether or when Yun Maxiao would return. Official Yun, how auspicious. May the god of longevity be blessed. Just then Yunlong walked in, followed by Yunfeng. The guests once again began to speak auspicious words. Yunlong smiled and cupped his fists in greeting. Yunfeng and his 2 concubine brothers stood in a row. As soon as Yunlong stood in front of the Yun matriarch, the ceremonial official began to chant, The auspicious hour has come. Children and grandchildren kneel and bow to the god of longevity. After the ceremonial official finished, Yunlong took the lead and all the children and grandchildren knelt and bowed to the Yun matriarch. After the ceremony, Yunlong stood up and began to say a few words of congratulations. Your son kowtows to you, mother, and wishes you good fortune. Wait. Yunlan's speech was suddenly interrupted by a loud voice. That voice was full of energy, and it was clear that the speaker had a high cultivation. Everyone turned to the door in shock, only to see a tall, thin, yellow-robed Taoist standing there. This was none other than the malicious Taoist master. Chapter 105. The crowd looked toward the spiritual master and some of them recognized him. Isn't that a demon hunter? What's he doing here? He doesn't look like a guest invited by official Yun. Did he come uninvited? Don't talk nonsense. There's only one reason why a demon hunter would come uninvited. There's a demon here. The Yun Manor is a peaceful place, so how could there be a demon here? The spiritual master walked into the main hall amidst the crowd's gazes and chatter. Yunlong looked displeased. Offering a birthday celebration at an auspicious time was very particular, and now that he'd been interrupted and missed the auspicious hour, he wouldn't be able to continue. Yunji, who's this Taoist? The Yun matriarch was naturally displeased as well. Yunji was Yunlan's courtesy name, and he replied, He's a rather famous demon hunter in the capital. Allow me to ask him about the situation. After Yunlong finished speaking, he walked towards the Taoist and Buddhist master. Yun Ruoyan's gaze, however, was on Madame N. Although she was trying her best to maintain a stern expression, her lips occasionally curled up in a smile. From this, Yun Ruoyan could tell that this Taoist had to be the demon hunter Madame N had hired to capture her. Mistress, Xiao mistress. Suddenly, Qiuqiu's nervous voice rang out in Yun Ruoyan's mind. What's the matter, Qiuqiu? I suddenly sensed a strange and powerful aura. Is someone coming? Qiuqiu asked. A Taoist. Yun Ruoyan frowned. It seemed that Madame N hadn't just brought along a random Taoist priest. She was serious. But if Qiuqiu was as powerful as she said, how could he not be able to tell that she wasn't a demon? Yun Ruoyan had to be careful. What brings you to the residence of Yun all of a sudden? Yun Lan asked as he welcomed the spiritual master. Although he was displeased by the spiritual master's sudden arrival, he still had to be polite before using force against a demon hunter. I'm here to capture a demon, of course. The spiritual master didn't beat around the bush. Capture a demon? Yun Lan said in astonishment. My residence of Yun has been peaceful for 100 years and there has never been a demon. I'm afraid you are mistaken. Whether she's mistaken or not, we'll know once I've beaten her back to her original form. The spiritual master's gaze pierced through the crowd and landed squarely on Yun Ruoyan. Taoist priest, do you mean that there are really demons here? Yun Lan asked with a frown. Demon hunters didn't have nothing better to do, especially this somewhat famous Taoist and Buddhist Taoist master in front of him. Yun Lan still somewhat believed his words. Of course. Please excuse me, Your Excellency. The spiritual master walked past Yun Lan and headed straight for Yun Ruoyan. Master, this person's aura is very strange. His spiritual energy is very strong, and he doesn't seem like a cultivator of the orthodox path. Master, be careful. Qiuqiu warned. Yun Ruoyan met the Taoist priest's gaze, and the coldness in his eyes made her heart clench. However, there was no killing intent in his gaze. Perhaps the other party wasn't just here to catch a demon. Perhaps the other party already knew that she wasn't a demon. What was he trying to do? She was now a peak 7th rank blade master, and before her spiritual sea expanded, the bracelet's power wouldn't be of much help to her. She was clearly no match for this old Taoist. She didn't dare use the Feilai blade in front of everyone, so she couldn't help but feel nervous. Grandmother. Under the gaze of the Taoist priest, Yun Ruoyan slowly retreated to the Yun matriarch's side and turned to the Yun matriarch. This old Taoist is so scary, I'm scared. The Yun matriarch tugged on Yun Ruoyan's hand and looked at the Taoist monk. Her voice was laced with anger. Taoist, my child is timid. Please don't scare her. Old madam, I have been rude. Miss Yun, if you don't wish to suffer any physical pain, please follow this humble Taoist. Taoist priest, what do you mean by this? Yun Lan asked from behind. The people watching the ceremony were also in an uproar at this time, discussing spiritedly. Where demon hunters suddenly appeared, there would definitely be demons. Could it be that a demon had appeared in the Yun family? Master, can't you tell? Madame N walked out and pointed at Yun Ruoyan. She's possessed by a demon, and the real Yun Ruoyan has already been killed by this demon. What did you say? Yun Lan and the Yun matriarch exclaimed at the same time. The crowd was also in an uproar. Li Qianxiao and Li Qianyuan, who were watching the ceremony from the sidelines, were also stunned. Master, in just a few short months, Ruoyan seems to have changed into a completely different person. Don't you think it's strange? Madame N turned to the Yun matriarch. Mother, would the Ruoyan of the past have made you happy like she does now? It's said that a leopard never changes its spots. Haven't any of you suspected that a person's personality would suddenly change so drastically? Grandmother, father. Yun Ruoyao and Yun Ruoyu also stood up with Madame N and pointed at Yun Ruoyan. The Yun Ruoyan in front of you is possessed by a demon. Otherwise, how could she have broken through from a 3rd rank to a 7th rank blade master in just a few months? This isn't something a mortal can do. A 7th rank blade master. Yun Lan and the Yun matriarch were both shocked. Ruoyan, you're already a 7th rank blade master. Every month, the family academy would keep tabs on every student's progress, so that the head of the family would be able to better understand how strong the scions were. Because Yun Ruoyan wasn't at the academy, this was spared. Although Yun Ruoyao and the others suspected Yun Ruoyan's cultivation, they didn't have any concrete evidence, so they didn't report it to Yun Lan. It was only when the spiritual master was able to determine Yun Ruoyan's exact cultivation that Yun Ruoyan and the others dared to speak of it in public. And only then did Yun Lan and the Yun matriarch learn of Yun Ruoyan's true cultivation. Faced with their questions, Yun Ruoyan quickly came up with a response. My breakthrough was partly due to grandfather's pills. Yun Ruoyan explained. Coupled with the fact that I've been cultivating for a while now, I've been extremely talented. I've been extremely talented at cultivation since I was a child, and I became a third-rank blade master before I was 6. Now that I'm 13, if I hadn't stagnated for 3 years, wouldn't it be normal for me to become a 7th-rank blade master? Yun Ruoyan's words were logical. She purposely avoided the fact that she had advanced 4 ranks in such a short period of time, and instead focused on her talent. Based on her previous talent, becoming a 3rd-rank blade master at 6 and a 7th rank at 13 was indeed quite normal. Father, grandmother, I'm not a demon. Seeing that the Yun matriarch and Yun Lan's expressions had softened, Yun Ruoyan continued, demons all have demonic auras. Grandmother, I've been with you all this time. Have you sensed any demonic aura from me? You have such a high cultivation that even the realgar wine I fed you couldn't force you to reveal your true form. Of course you can hide your demonic aura, Madam An replied. Mother, when did you feed me realgar wine? Why didn't I know? Yun Ruoyan pretended not to know anything. Mother had your maidservant secretly put it in your food. Of course you didn't know, Yun Ruoyu hurriedly explained. What? Yun Ruoyan looked at Madam An heartbroken. Mother, I've always respected you, but you've done this to me. I didn't. Mother, you don't have to explain. Madam An was about to explain, but Yun Ruoyan cut her off. Grandmother, I know that you're the only one in the Yun family who truly cares for me. I lost my mother when I was young, and because I was ugly no one liked me. Later, because I lost my talent for cultivation, I was chased out of the family academy. Yun Ruoyan looked pitifully at the Yun matriarch. But I never gave up on myself. I quietly endured everyone's mockery and bullying, cultivating alone. All I want is to regain my cultivation talent one day and let everyone look at me in a different light. Yun Ruoyan turned to Madam An. Now that I've done it, my mother has colluded with demons to slander me and accuse me of being a demon. Is there really no place for an orphan like me in the Yun family? Madam An knew that Yun Ruoyan wasn't a demon, and she couldn't help but feel a little guilty when she looked at her. Mother. Yun Ruoyan continued. Are you saying that I'm a demon because I'm not as useless, stupid, and ugly as I used to be? Which mother doesn't want her child to become better? Why would you accuse me of being a demon when I've become a better person? As the crowd listened to Yun Ruoyan's emotional narration, they began to guess at Madam An's motives. It wasn't uncommon for a wife-born child of a wife-born mother to try to get rid of that child to raise her own blood relative. As long as Yun Ruoyan led the crowd in this direction, they would immediately fill in the blanks on their own. Madam An was rendered speechless by Yun Ruoyan's argument, and even Yun Ruoyao and Yun Ruoyu didn't know how to respond. I believe you. You're my good granddaughter, not a demon, the Yun matriarch said, pointing at the spiritual master. At this moment the Yunshur said, then pointed at the Taoist Buddha. Don't try to sow discord between our family. Please leave my Yun family. The Yun matriarch still wanted to ease the tension between the two families, so she turned to the spiritual master. Old Taoist, leave the house. Leave. There are no demons in the Yun family and we don't welcome you. The Yun matriarch's sons and daughters-in-law also began to coax the spiritual master. They were all members of the Yun family, and they had all seen what Madam An had done to Yun Ruoyan in the past. As a result, they were certain that Madam An had summoned the spiritual master. Madam An was incredibly anxious. Earlier, the spiritual master had told her that he could turn Yun Ruoyan into a demon, but that was actually an illusion. Just like the fox that he had conjured to scare Madam An, it was only an illusion created using spiritual energy to confuse others. Today, however, the spiritual master was going to conjure a powerful illusion to confuse everyone present. This illusion would take some time to complete, and Madam An was trying to stall for time. However, under Yun Ruoyan's incessant questioning, Madam An couldn't delay any longer. She called out to the spiritual master, "Spiritual master, hurry up." Just then the spiritual master, who had remained motionless all this time, suddenly opened his arms and drew a large circle in the air. The prayer beads in his hands began to emit a faint Buddhist glow. The glow wasn't particularly bright, but it gradually filled the entire hall. Chapter 106. Taoism and Buddhism were two separate schools of thought. Although they weren't enemies, they had to defend each other. This was a rule that had been in place for thousands of years. But now, a Taoist priest was able to unleash a Buddhist aura. Yun Ruoyan was no exception. She stared intently at the Taoist priest, ready to deal with his attack at any moment. If it really came down to it, Yun Ruoyan wouldn't hesitate to release the Feilai blade to kill the Taoist priest. The beads in the Taoist priest's hand glowed brighter and brighter. Yun Ruoyan didn't know what poison he was planning, and she couldn't help but feel nervous. Yun Ruoyan curled her fingers and began to circulate the spiritual energy in her body, ready to attack at any moment. But just as she was about to circulate the spiritual energy in her body, she felt an irrepressible pain on the right side of her face. Ah! Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but cry out, but the pain only grew more intense. The pain was as if someone was cutting her face with a knife. It was a blunt knife and it was a sharp pain. Ah! Yun Ruoyan cried out once more. She covered her face with her hands and couldn't help but bend over. The crowd, who had been stunned by the Buddhist aura in the Taoist priest's hand, finally reacted to Yun Ruoyan's sudden cry and painful movements. "Ruoyan, what's wrong?" the Yun matriarch asked. "The master's demon-subduing technique is working," Madame An hurriedly exclaimed. "Xiaolon, hurry up and help the old madam away from that demon. She's about to reveal her true form." The crowd was in an uproar. Could Miss Yun really be a demon? That shouldn't be the case. None of us are afraid of this Buddhist aura, but she is. Looks like she really is a demon. By this time Yun Ruoyan was in so much pain that she wanted to smash her face into the ground. Her entire body was curled up into a ball. Chiu, what's wrong with me? My face, why does it hurt so much?" Yun Ruoyan called out to Chiu in her mind. She felt that she wouldn't be able to think if the pain continued, and she wouldn't be able to communicate with Chiu. "Mistress, you've been poisoned." Chiu was also extremely anxious, but it couldn't do anything about it. It was sealed and couldn't leave the bracelet's pocket dimension. And even if it did, given its current strength and appearance, it would be just as dangerous as Yun Ruoyan's. Poisoned? Yun Ruoyan was a little surprised. When had she been poisoned? "Master, the poison was on your face, but it's already starting to spread throughout your entire body." Chiu paced around anxiously in the bracelet's pocket dimension. Damn it! She finally remembered how she had been poisoned. That damned Rong Yuehong. Even if she's going to die, she's going to drag me down with her. Beside the birthmark on Yun Ruoyan's right cheek was a red mark left by Rong Yuehong's fingernails. So this girl had come to take her life all along. Rong Yuehong had already smeared the poison on her fingernails. She only needed to scratch her nails lightly on Yun Ruoyan's body to claim her life. She should have known that, given Rong Yuehong's personality, she wouldn't have just asked her to carry him. Ever since her reincarnation, Yun Ruoyan had always been cautious, and she hadn't expected to fall for so many tricks. In her current state, she couldn't even summon the Feilai blade, much less use spiritual energy. Could it be that he could only be manipulated by others? "Look! The demon has revealed itself!" Madame An suddenly yelled. Everyone's eyes were on Yun Ruoyan. She was lying on the ground, her head on the ground, and 9 long fox tails had suddenly sprouted from her lower body. The tails were snow white and their fur was fluffy and large. Each tail was at least 3 meters long, and when they swung together, it was as if they were ready to attack the people around them at any moment. "Ah, Ruoyan." The Yun matriarch stared in shock at Yun Ruoyan's sudden growth of tails. Even Yunlon was dumbfounded. "Master, look. She's a demon, and Yun Ruoyan's a 9-tailed fox demon." Madame An called out to Yunlon. She was both nervous and surprised. The scene before her eyes was simply too real. Even though the Taoist priest had told her that this was only an illusion, she still couldn't believe that the scene before her was real. Yunlon reacted and immediately helped the Yun matriarch down so that Xiaolon could take her to a safe location. The Yun matriarch stared at Yun Ruoyan as the others helped her to the side. "Demon, the demon has appeared. Run. The demon will eat you." Among the spectators were a few officials, women and children. When they saw this scene, all of them turned pale with fright. By the time they reacted, they were screaming and running out of the hall. Some of the more advanced cultivators stayed behind, surrounding Yun Ruoyan and the spiritual master from afar. Li Qianxiao and Li Qianyuan were surrounded by the guards as they retreated to a corner of the hall. "She's actually a demon," Li Qianxiao exclaimed in disbelief. Li Qianyuan only narrowed his slender eyes, not saying a word. Father, Sister Ruan must have been harmed by this demon a long time ago. Let's kill this demon and avenge Sister Ruan. Yun Ruoyao and Yun Ruoyu stood on either side of Yun Lan, one after the other. Yi Qianying had long since retreated with the other scions of the Yun family. Master Taoist, what should we do with this demon? Yun Lan asked the spiritual master. Everyone, don't act rashly. The spiritual master was afraid that the crowd would attack Yun Ruoyan at the same time. Leave this demon to me, I'll subdue it myself. The spiritual master looked at Yun Ruoyan's pained appearance on the ground. His illusions weren't meant to harm anyone. His plan was to trick the crowd into thinking that Yun Ruoyan was a demon. Then he would capture Yun Ruoyan and take her away. But now Yun Ruoyan looked as if she'd been poisoned. It seems like Madame N didn't trust me and she's done it herself. The spiritual master turned to glare at Madame N confused. Madame N urged, Spiritual master, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and subdue her. If Yun Ruoyan were to die, the spiritual master's efforts would be in vain. Without hesitation, he threw the prayer beads in his hand at Yun Ruoyan. The beads grew larger and larger in the air, then fell onto Yun Ruoyan's head and bound her up. Because of the poison, the right side of Yun Ruoyan's face was swollen and deformed once more. Under the excruciating pain, she began scratching at her face. He wouldn't let her hurt him. Even so, Yun Ruoyan's face had been scratched by herself, and purplish-red blood flowed down her fingers and onto the qilin beads on her wrist. Li Mo's flaming steed had already reached the edge of the capital, and they could see the eastern gates of the capital from afar. Your Highness, we're here, the black-clad man by Li Mo's side called out. Wasn't it just a birthday banquet? Why would the prince, who wouldn't even frown if the sky were to collapse, rush to the banquet without a care for his injuries, and even risk using spiritual energy? Just as Li Mo's brows relaxed, he felt a sharp pain in his right index finger and his brows furrowed. The qilin beads were stained with Li Mo's blood, and his sudden pain was a warning from the qilin beads that the wearer was in danger. The gates of the capital were right in front of them, and the black-clad man by Li Mo's side had already taken out his token to enter the city. However, Li Mo suddenly leapt into the air and galloped into the city. Your Highness, the black-clad man called out to the skies. Find me at the Yun Manor, Li Mo's voice rang out in his mind. The 5 or 6 black-clad men all looked in the direction that Li Mo had disappeared, and one of them asked, Su Bei, where did His Highness go? To the Yun Manor. Su Bei continued galloping toward the eastern gates of the capital. In the main hall of the Yun Manor, Yun Ruoyan, bound by the prayer beads, was rolling on the floor in pain, banging her head against the ground from time to time. The poison was extremely potent, causing excruciating pain, but not causing her to faint. Instead, the more pain she felt, the more awake she became. Yun Ruoyan couldn't even knock herself out. Xianxia was also rolling around in the bracelet's pocket dimension. Although it had lost contact with Yun Ruoyan, it could still feel her pain. Why don't you stop, beast? The spiritual master removed the gourd from his waist, walked to Yun Ruoyan's side, and poured the contents of the gourd onto her body. Then Yun Ruoyan turned into a 9-tailed white fox, lying motionless on the ground. The spiritual master cradled the white fox in his arms and hurriedly walked out. His medicinal wine could only suppress the poison in Yun Ruoyan's body for a short while, and he had to find a way to cure her as soon as possible. If a rare human furnace were to die in front of him, he would be so annoyed that he would vomit blood. Taoist. Madame N walked over and blocked the Taoist priest's path. Taoist priest, please stay. Madame N wanted the spiritual master to explain everything clearly, such as how he had discovered that Yun Ruoyan was a demon, and why he had suddenly appeared. If she didn't explain everything clearly and the Yun matriarch and Yun Lan questioned her, Madame N would have to explain herself once more. But before Madame N could finish her sentence, the Taoist monk flung Madame N aside with a furious wave of his sleeve. Who told you to poison her? If she dies, I won't forgive you. Taoist priest, what's the meaning of this? Yun Lan stepped forward to stop the Taoist Buddha from attacking Madame N. Get out of my way. The poison in Yun Ruoyan's body was getting deeper and deeper, and the spiritual master had completely lost his patience. Seeing how protective the spiritual master was of the fox in his arms, Yun Lan couldn't help but feel suspicious. Taoist, if you're leaving, you can leave the fox behind. Oh, Lord Yun still wants to compete with me. the Buddhist priest said in a low voice. Yunlon had already gotten into position. Having seen the spiritual master use his divine arts, he knew that he was a master and he didn't bother hiding his strength. Yunlon channeled all of his 9th-rank spiritual energy, and a dazzling ball of spiritual energy appeared in his hand. The spiritual master snorted. If you want to spar, sure, but today's not the time. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned into a cloud of black smoke and flew away from Yunlan's side. Yunlan hurriedly chased after the black smoke into the courtyard, but it didn't stop for even a moment. Just as the black smoke was about to fly away, a black figure stepped on a green light and appeared above the Yun family's courtyard in the blink of an eye. "Bastard, how dare you touch my woman?" A cold voice rang out from the sky. Chapter 107. It's the Slaughtering King. The Slaughtering King is here. Some of the sharp-eyed cultivators recognized the man standing on a sword in the sky. It was none other than the Slaughtering King, Li Mo. Naturally, the spiritual master had heard of Li Mo's name before, and he didn't dare to linger any longer. He transformed into a cloud of black smoke and flew westward. Li Mo immediately blocked the spiritual master's path. Not daring to face him head-on, the spiritual master turned to the southwest, only to find Li Mo standing in front of him again. Just like that, the Taoist priest tried to escape in all directions, only to be cornered by Li Mo. Li Mo's expression was cold, and a blue light flashed in his inky eyes. Amidst the black smoke, he saw Yunruian in the embrace of a centipede spirit that was completely black in color. Yunruian's veil had fallen off, and the right side of her face was swollen and deformed. Clearly she had been poisoned. Although Yunruian couldn't move or speak, she hadn't fainted. As a result, the pain continued to torment her and tears began to stream down her cheeks. Li Mo's hands behind his back clenched into fists. Seeing that he couldn't escape from Li Mo, the spiritual master dispersed his black smoke and revealed his true form. "Your Highness, I'm only trying to capture a demon. Why are you forcing me? This 1,000-year fox demon harmed the young mistress of the Yun Manor, and it even tried to confuse the crowd. I'm only capturing it for the sake of the common people." "You bastard!" Li Mo interrupted him coldly, then waved his sleeves at the spiritual master. The beads on Yunruian's body that had been glowing with Buddhist light dimmed. Everyone was looking up at the sky. The Yun matriarch and the scions of the Yun family had also emerged from a side hall, and they saw that the fox in the spiritual master's arms had reverted to Yunruian's appearance. "Do you think a mere illusion can fool those idiots down there? Do you think you can fool me?" Li Mo said coldly. "It's really a demon crying demon." Li Mo had infused his spiritual energy into his words, so that everyone could hear him clearly. So Yunruian wasn't a demon, and everything had been an illusion created by the spiritual master. Could it be that the Taoist priest was the demon? Shilon, Peony and Linglon had been helping out from behind the scenes. When the commotion broke out in the main hall, they found out that Yunruian had been captured by a Taoist priest. The 3 anxious maids wanted to find Yunlon and tell him that their young miss wasn't a demon, and that everything had been part of Madame Anne's scheme. But the crowd was chaotic and they were squeezed out of the hall. When the 3 of them heard the Slaughtering King's words, they immediately cried out, "Our young mistress isn't a demon. That demon was hired by Madame Wang to harm our young mistress. We saw it with our own eyes." "Old master, old madam, this evil Taoist conspired with first madam to harm young Mississippi. Yes, old master, old madam, please save miss." The 3 maidservants spoke one after another with tears streaming down their faces. "Master, mother, don't listen to those girls' nonsense. I didn't harm Ruyan." Madame Anne was also in a state of panic. The development of the situation had far exceeded her expectations. Why had the spiritual master suddenly turned on her? Why had the Slaughtering King suddenly appeared? Yunlon glanced at Madame Anne coldly. Although he didn't say a word, his gaze was enough to frighten Madame Anne, and she couldn't help but take a step back. "Mother." Yun Ruoyao supported Madame Anne from behind and whispered in her ear, "Mother, don't panic. Yun Ruoyan seems to have been poisoned and she might not survive. If she dies, it doesn't matter if she's a demon or human." When Madame Anne heard Yun Ruoyao's words, she hurriedly looked up and prayed that Yun Ruoyan wouldn't survive. The spiritual master wasn't relaxed either. The fact that Li Mo had been able to see through his illusions so easily and see through his disguise meant that Li Mo's spiritual energy cultivation was far superior to his own. It was clearly unwise to oppose someone as strong as Li Mo, but Yun Ruoyan was simply too tempting to the spiritual master. If he were to give up now, he might never be able to advance any further in his life, and he would forever be a centipede demon. As a result, the spiritual master decided to give it a try. Impressive, Your Highness. The spiritual master turned to Li Mo, but she's in my hands now. If you dare make a move, I'll kill her immediately. If you dare touch her, I'll tear your bones apart and turn you to dust. Li Mo's voice was cold and indifferent, but his anger was obvious. Suppressing his anger, he continued, I don't care what kind of demon you are. Put down the person in your arms and I'll spare your life. Please calm down, Your Highness. The spiritual master laughed. This woman is so ugly that she doesn't pique my interest at all. I don't think your taste is that bad. However, I'm guessing that the reason you're so protective of her is because of her unique constitution. Li Mo didn't respond, but he had already sentenced the spiritual master to death in his heart. He was the only one in the world who knew that Yun Ruoyan was a human furnace. Since this spiritual master knew, then he had to die. The spiritual master relaxed when Li Mo remained silent. There are too many people here. Your Highness, why don't we find a place where we can talk and make a deal? Li Mo's eyes were as cold as ice by this point. He looked at the spiritual master's fingers around Yun Ruoyan's neck, his fingers long and slender, and his fingernails gleamed with a sheen of sharpness. If he hadn't been injured, he could have teleported away to save Yun Ruoyan. However, the journey on the sword had been so turbulent that Li Mo wasn't confident that he could rescue Yun Ruoyan unscathed. Sure. Li Mo took out a pill from his robes and tossed it to the spiritual master for Yun Ruoyan to swallow. The spiritual master caught the pill and saw that it was a high-grade antidote. He smiled at the slaughtering king's generosity before feeding it to Yun Ruoyan. After swallowing the antidote, Yun Ruoyan finally closed her eyes and fainted. The spiritual master led the way with Yun Ruoyan, and Li Mo followed closely behind. Two streaks of sword light, one green and one black, sped westward. As Yun Lan watched them leave, he called out to the sky, Your Highness, I'll leave my daughter in your care. Don't worry, official Yun. With uncle around, nothing will happen to Miss Yun, Li Qianyuan said, coming to Yun Lan's side. The spiritual master stopped at a patch of forest, and Li Mo perched on a treetop about 30 feet away from him. Your Highness, I know I'm no match for you. The spiritual master turned to Li Mo. I can hand Miss Yun over to Your Highness, but you have to agree to one condition. What conditions? Li Mo's voice was devoid of any emotion, only icy coldness. When Your Highness is done and she's no longer useful to you. The spiritual master raised an eyebrow. Can you return her to me? Although the spiritual master didn't say it explicitly, his meaning was clear enough. After the slaughtering king broke through his bottleneck, he would lend the cauldron to him. In the spiritual master's eyes, Yun Ruoyan's ugly appearance was beneath the slaughtering king's notice, and the slaughtering king had been protecting her for the same reason, to use her to improve his cultivation. Once Li Mo broke through, the cauldron wouldn't be of any use to him. Li Mo's fingernails grew out of his hands, and his lips curved in a cold smile. All right, I agree to your request. Can you hand her over to me now? That won't do. The spiritual master smiled. It's not that I don't trust you, slaughtering king, but this treasure is far too important. Whether or not I can break through to become a 9th-rank blade master depends entirely on this cauldron. After a moment's thought, he continued, I want you to swear an oath to the heavens that if you break this oath, you'll be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. The people of the Qianyuan continent believed in the existence of immortals, and believed that humans could become immortals through cultivation. As a result, the people of the Qianyuan continent, especially those who cultivated, took their oaths very seriously. Your Highness, you're a man of your word. If you make this oath, I'll believe you and immediately hand this woman over to you. And if I don't, the slaughtering king sneered. A cold glint appeared in the spiritual master's eyes. If your excellency, the slaughtering king, wishes to take this cauldron for yourself, then let us both perish together. If I can't have it, then neither can your highness. The spiritual master stared at Li Mo, waiting for his reply. At the same time, his hand on Yun Ruoyan's neck didn't loosen in the slightest. After a short silence, Li Mo spoke again. I swear that if I break my promise to you, I'll be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. Good. The spiritual master laughed heartily and made a hand seal. The beads that bound Yun Ruoyan returned to his hand. 3 years from now, I'll go to your manor and ask for this cauldron. The spiritual master tossed Yun Ruoyan to Li Mo, who caught her firmly in his arms. Farewell. The spiritual master cupped his fists toward Li Mo before turning to leave. What he didn't expect, however, was for Li Mo to appear in front of him once more, blocking his path. Your Highness, what's the meaning of this? The spiritual master frowned. I've already handed her over to you. Are you going to break your oath? Li Mo didn't respond to the spiritual master's question. Instead, he held Yun Ruoyan in one hand and opened his other hand in front of him. Sharp, hard, and metallic nails began to grow on his fair, slender fingers. Slaughtering King, don't you humans value oaths the most? The spiritual master finally began to panic. Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning? Haha. Li Mo laughed. If you can tell that I'm a human cauldron, can't you tell that I'm not human at all? Chapter 108. The fact that the slaughtering king wasn't human was far beyond the spiritual master's expectations. As he stared at Li Mo's long, silvery fingernails, his heart filled with a fear he'd never felt before. Those oaths and whatnot are just human tricks. I've never believed in them, Li Mo said, admiring his long fingernails. As Li Mo admired his long fingernails, he said, this king only believes in whose claws are sharper, whose teeth are sharper. The spiritual master's eyes widened, and as if he'd suddenly thought of something, he exclaimed, Are you a beast man? Then he shook his head in denial. No, you killed tens of thousands of beastman captives by the Li River, so you can't be a beastman, but you're neither a demon nor a spirit. What kind of person are you? You'll have to ask the King of Hell when you reach the netherworld. As soon as Li Mo finished speaking, he raised his right arm and attacked the spiritual master. Each of Li Mo's fingernails was half a foot long, glinting coldly in the air with the power to slice through metal. The spiritual master didn't dare to take the attack head-on. All he could do was retreat on the black sword chi. Li Mo accelerated the sword chi beneath his feet, quickly closing in on the spiritual master. His sharp fingernails were about to pierce the spiritual master's head. At that moment, the spiritual master raised his hand, his fingernails also growing half a foot long, blocking Li Mo's fingernails. Crack. The spiritual master's fingernails had been sliced off by Li Mo's single fingernail. Just as he was about to finish off the centipede in one fell swoop, the beads in the spiritual master's hand suddenly lit up with Buddhist light. The Buddhist aura formed a shield in front of the spiritual master, and Li Mo's sharp nails were actually blocked by it. It seems that I've underestimated you. Li Mo narrowed his eyes at the spiritual master. You're a centipede spirit, but you can use a Buddhist spiritual weapon? Haha, the spiritual master laughed. Do you think my 200 years of cultivation were for naught, Your Highness? After I transformed into a human, I began cultivating in a Taoist monastery. After my master died, I returned to the monastery. After master died, I began to travel the world, subduing devils and capturing demons to benefit the common people. The prayer beads in your hand must have been obtained by killing your own master. Li Mo continued. Apart from your own cultivation, a large portion of your cultivation came from absorbing the spiritual oceans of your two masters. That's why your cultivation has been restricted and has been unable to advance any further. The slaughtering king is indeed powerful. The spiritual master didn't deny Li Mo's conjecture. It looks like I'll have to fight to the death with the slaughtering king today. You think you're worthy of fighting to the death with this king? Li Mo said disdainfully. At the same time, his inky black eyes turned icy blue, and his claws grew longer and sharper. Not only the sharp claws on his hands, but even his arm began to change. First, Li Mo's arms grew thicker and stronger, then silver scales began to appear on his fingers and hands, extending all the way into his robes. You're actually... The spiritual master's voice trembled. Your true form is that of a dragon. You're the son of the Beast King. When Li Mo revealed his true form, the Taoists and Buddhas completely lost the courage to fight him. Your Highness. No, Your Highness. the spiritual master begged. I don't want that cauldron anymore, Your Highness, please spare my life. Only now did you realize my identity, Li Mo said coldly. Too late. Li Mo continued to exert force, and the transformation brought about an even more terrifying power. Under Li Mo's sharp claws, the Buddhist light shield began to slowly crumble. Die. The rope broke, the prayer beads scattered, and the shield finally disintegrated under Li Mo's claws. Flat. Li Mo's dragon claws pierced into the spiritual master's head as easily as a watermelon. The spiritual master's eyes and mouth widened, and his terrified scream was stuck in his throat. Li Mo was still holding the unconscious Yun Ruoyan in one hand, and his other hand was in the spiritual master's head, allowing the blood to drip down his fingernails. His green sword aura made him look both like a knight riding on a rainbow cloud and a demon from hell. The golden light of dusk gave Li Mo's black robes a mysterious sheen. He kicked the spiritual master's corpse away from his hands. The black sword aura beneath the spiritual master's feet had long dissipated at the moment of his death. His corpse left Li Mo's hands and fell straight into the forest below, transforming into a centipede dozens of feet long as it landed, scaring away a flock of birds returning to their nests. Li Mo let out a long sigh. His arms returned to normal and he held Yun Ruoyan in his arms. Just as he was about to rush back to the Yun Manor, his spiritual vortex suddenly began to churn violently. Li Mo had been injured to begin with, and his spiritual vortex had been shaken so badly that he had been suppressing it. The battle just now had undoubtedly worsened his injuries. Li Mo's spiritual vortex was in turmoil, and he was unable to fly on his sword. The green sword aura beneath his feet flickered, and he held Yun Ruoyan tightly as he fell toward the forest below. Fortunately, it wasn't a rocky area below them but a dense forest. Li Mo carried Yun Ruoyan as they fell from the sky onto a lush canopy, breaking countless branches along the way before finally landing on the ground. Thump. Li Mo's back was on the ground and Yun Ruoyan was protected by his chest, so she wasn't injured in the slightest. On the other hand, Li Mo spat out a mouthful of blood from the impact of the fall. Li Mo's back ached and his spiritual vortex churned. He lay on the ground for a while trying to stand up but failing several times he could only give up. He touched Yun Ruoyan's face and felt that the swelling on her right cheek had subsided. A high-grade antidote was indeed effective and he relaxed a little. Stop pretending. Li Mo pinched Yun Ruoyan's cheek. It'll be dark soon, and we're in the Forest of Dead Souls 250 miles outside the city. I'm heavily injured and I can't use spiritual energy. I need to find a safe place to recuperate. Yun Ruoyan lay on Li Mo's chest, feeling his attempts to get up but failing. She was still considering whether to continue pretending to be unconscious or not. When she heard Li Mo's voice, she immediately opened her eyes and sat up from his chest. Where am I? Yun Ruoyan looked as if she had just woken up. She opened her misty eyes and asked, Why am I here? Don't you remember? Li Mo asked cooperatively. I only remember that I was bewitched by a demonic cultivator in the Yun Manor's main hall. Yun Ruoyan looked to her left and right. Where did that demonic cultivator go? I killed him, Li Mo said. You killed him? That's great. Yun Ruoyan jumped up in joy and bowed to Li Mo. Your Highness, you're truly a hero. I'm truly in awe of you. Yun Ruoyan had only said so much to conceal her nervousness. She had actually woken up while Li Mo was battling with the spiritual master, and she had even opened her eyes to take a look. Unfortunately, she had seen Li Mo's transformation, and she had been so frightened that she had immediately closed her eyes. She had heard the spiritual master call him a dragon and the son of the Beast King. Yun Ruoyan's mind had been muddled at the time, and it had remained muddled even now. Even with her 2 lives' worth of experience, Yun Ruoyan couldn't understand why her brother, the slaughtering king of the Li Kingdom, wasn't a human but a dragon and the son of the Beast King? But if he was the son of the Beast King, why was it rumored that he had killed tens of thousands of Beastkin in order to quell the Beastkin rebellion? It was said that the Beastkin's blood had dyed the river red, and the scent of their blood had even reached the city gates. Had Li Mo betrayed his own kin? Or were the rumors false? If you have any questions you can ask me, Li Mo said when he saw Yun Ruoyan's hesitant expression. Ah. Yun Ruoyan paused, realizing that her hesitation had been too obvious. No. I don't have any questions. Yun Ruoyan scratched her head. Even she found it strange that she hadn't been able to show her emotions in such a long time. Why did she suddenly lose her composure as soon as she met this fellow? If you really don't have any questions, help me up. Li Mo looked at the still dazed Yun Ruoyan and helplessly extended a hand. It'll be dark soon and both of us are crippled. If we don't hide, we'll be in great danger. Yun Ruoyan carried Li Mo through the forest, but she still couldn't find the safe spot that Li Mo had mentioned. The forest wasn't like the valley where one could find a cave to hide in. Here there were only trees and the sun had already set. Yun Ruoyan was a little anxious. Even though it was summer and the days were long and the nights were short, once the sun set, the sky would darken especially quickly, and those creatures that feared the light and preferred the dark would appear. Although Yun Ruoyan wasn't a coward, she didn't like being pestered by those creatures either. There's a tree up ahead, Li Mo said, his voice weak. Yun Ruoyan knew that he urgently needed to stop and rest, so she quickened her pace and carried him toward the tree he was pointing at. The two of them arrived at the base of the tree. Yun Ruoyan estimated that it would take 5 or 6 people to wrap their arms around it. The crown of the tree was very lush, but she couldn't see where they could hide. Would they have to climb into the crown? Of the two of them, one was heavily injured and the other was poisoned. Neither of them could use spiritual energy, so climbing up the tree would be a difficult task. Turn behind the tree, Li Mo reminded Yun Ruoyan when he saw that she kept looking up at the crown of the tree. Yun Ruoyan nodded and carried Li Mo to the back of the tree. To her surprise, she found a hole in the tree. The hollow was quite large, more than enough for the two of them to hide in. I didn't expect such a lush tree to be hollow. Yun Ruoyan helped Li Mo into the hollow. How did you know there was a hollow here? Li Mo had already sat down and closed his eyes to rest. When he heard Yun Ruoyan's question, he replied with his eyes still closed. Generally speaking, trees of this size in the depths of the mountains and forests would have a hollow. Yun Ruoyan had never ventured far from home in her past life, and the furthest place she had been was the imperial territory on the Kongming Mountains. Even then she had only stayed there for about 10 days. As a result, she didn't know much about forests in the wilderness. Wait, this isn't a natural hollow. Yun Ruoyan touched the inside of the hollow and found traces of human scratching. However, there shouldn't be anyone living in the depths of the mountains and forests, so why would there be such a hollow? Unless, could this be the cave of a spirit or beast? Yun Ruoyan exclaimed in shock. Chapter 109. Li Mo didn't answer Yun Ruoyan's question. However, after a moment's thought, Yun Ruoyan confirmed her suspicions. Yun Ruoyan had heard of the Forest of Dead Souls 250 miles west of the capital. It was a land of Yin with little yang energy and little spiritual energy. To the west of the forest there was a graveyard. Wandering ghosts, unwilling to leave, would wander into the forest in search of animals to possess. Demons, unable to cultivate on their own, would sneak into the city to harm people. However, these demons were generally very weak, and while killing them might be difficult for a low-level cultivator, it would be as easy as killing an ant for a demon hunter. As a result, some of the more cowardly demons didn't dare to wander into the forest. During the day they would go out of the city to hunt down lone cultivators, and at night they would return to the forest. Apart from the demon-possessed demons, there were also a number of beasts that came from all over the world. The Li Kingdom valued martial arts and everyone was allowed to cultivate. As a result, most of the spiritual energy in the mountains, secluded valleys, and secret realms were occupied by humans, and the weaker beasts could only congregate in places where spiritual energy was thin. The tree hole that Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo were in was where these beasts resided. Hey! Yun Ruoyan called out to Li Mo. Li Mo had been meditating for more than 2 hours. By now the sky was completely dark and the tree hole was so dark that they couldn't even see their own fingers. Seeing that Li Mo still didn't respond, Yun Ruoyan took out the beast cores that she had kept in her pocket dimension. The cores weren't very high grade and they only emitted a faint yellow glow. Yun Ruoyan had to take out 5 of them to barely light up the tree hole. What worried Yun Ruoyan the most was that the owner of the tree hole could return at any moment. Both she and Li Mo were crippled, unable to use spiritual energy. If they were to encounter a demon, they wouldn't know how to defend themselves. Chirp 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 chirp, can you hear me? Answer me if you can. Yun Ruoyan tried to communicate with Chirp again, but there was still no response. Not only was there no response, Even the Feilai blade in her mind had disappeared. Yun Ruoyan's connection with Qiuqiu and the Feilai blade relied on her mental energy, which originated from the human brain. She didn't know what sort of poison Rong Yuehong had given her, but she still felt a lingering fear from the excruciating pain. That kind of bone-piercing pain would not only torture people, but it would also destroy their brains and affect their mental strength. With Yun Ruoyan's current level of mental strength, she could barely retrieve a few items from the bracelet's pocket dimension. Yun Ruoyan hugged her knees as she sat by Li Mo's side. She couldn't contact Qiuqiu, nor could she use the Feilai blade. The only person by her side was still recuperating, and he was completely silent and unresponsive. Even though it was summer, the yin energy in the forest was so strong that it felt chilly. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but lean closer to Li Mo. As the night deepened, all kinds of strange noises began to appear in the forest. Hearing these strange noises, which she hadn't heard in a long time, a feeling of fear slowly crept into her heart. "Hey!" Yun Ruoyan turned to Li Mo once more. Even though she knew that he wouldn't answer her, she still tried to divert his attention and shake off her fear. "Why did you take so long to recuperate? Didn't you kill that centipede spirit quite easily? I was hoping that you'd send me home directly, but I didn't expect to fall into this damned place with you." Yun Ruoyan subconsciously looked around. She could see two faint shadows reflected on the walls of the cave. Yun Ruoyan's gaze wandered around before landing on Li Mo. Li Mo was dressed in a silk robe that matched his shoulder-length hair. His facial features were all hidden in the shadows, giving him a mysterious, cold, and unapproachable air. The first time Yun Ruoyan had met him, he had been dressed in this manner and he hadn't changed in the past few months. Her eyes suddenly flashed as she looked at Li Mo. Then she leaned closer to him and sniffed. It wasn't smelly. She sniffed again. There was a faint medicinal aroma which Yun Ruoyan knew was unique to pillmasters. Lin Zainan had it on him. Because pillmasters often use their own spiritual flames to refine pills, their bodies would be stained with the unique aroma of spiritual pills that couldn't be washed off. Li Mo was both a pillmaster and a summoner, so it wasn't strange for him to have a medicinal aroma on him. What Yun Ruoyan found strange was that it was said that summoners were born with the aura of wild beasts. They could use spiritual energy to control the size and nature of this aura, thereby attracting, threatening, and controlling beasts. Yun Ruoyan frowned and sniffed as hard as she could. Apart from the medicinal aroma, she didn't smell anything else on Li Mo's body. In fact, Yun Ruoyan had never seen a real beastmaster before, so she didn't know what it was like. Perhaps that kind of aura could only be sensed by beast. Yun Ruoyan stopped sniffing and turned to look at Li Mo's face. It was said that no one had ever clearly seen the slaughtering king's face. His face was always hidden under the shadow of his hair, as if shrouded in a layer of fog. Although he didn't wear a mask, it was difficult to see his face clearly from afar. Although Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo had been in close contact many times before, she had always been on the defensive. Yun Ruoyan naturally didn't want to look at the man's face. Coupled with her nervousness, every time she came face to face with Li Mo, she would either squint or close her eyes. As a result, Yun Ruoyan's impression of Li Mo was only of his ink-black eyes and chiseled features. His facial features were a complete blur. As a result, in this cramped tree hole, Yun Ruoyan was bored and wanted to find something to do. Yun Ruoyan squatted down, picked up a beast core and leaned forward in front of Li Mo. Under the faint glow of the beast core, Li Mo's face gradually became clearer. His eyebrows were very high, his nose was straight and his eyebrows were long and black. His eyes were closed, but the slits between his eyes were very slender. "Not bad," Yun Ruoyan murmured to herself. Yun Ruoyan muttered to herself, "He Xiu looks about 50% like Li Qianhan and 80% like Li Xiu. But his face is too pale," Yun Ruoyan added, tilting her head. Perhaps because he had been hiding in the shadows for so long, Li Mo's face was very white, but it wasn't a pale white, but rather a lustrous white. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but think back to the right arm that Li Mo had transformed into when he was killing the Taoist priest. That arm was 3 times the size of a normal human arm, and it was covered in scales that glowed with a silvery white light. Yun Ruoyan's heart, which she had just managed to calm down, began to thump again. When she looked at Li Mo again, she couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. Just as Yun Ruoyan was about to avert her gaze, Li Mo suddenly opened his eyes. His ink-black eyes glinted coldly as he stared at Yun Ruoyan. Startled, Yun Ruoyan subconsciously opened her mouth to scream, but she managed to cover her mouth in time. Her body fell backward uncontrollably. Liemo reached out and caught Yun Ruoyan's waist, pulling her into his embrace. Thinking that he was going to touch her again, Yun Ruoyan began to struggle. "Let go of me, let go of me. Don't move, something's coming." Liemo's cold voice rang out by Yun Ruoyan's ear. "Something's coming." Yun Ruoyan immediately quieted down. The thing Liemo was referring to was naturally a demonic beast. Just then, footsteps could be heard from afar. From the sound of it, there were only two people. "Brother, we've gotten quite a haul today. We can finally have a good meal," a shrill voice called out. "Haha." Then the shrill voice laughed coarsely. "I've been starving for 3 days and my chest is almost sticking to my back. Hurry up and cook this meat for me." The voice wasn't coming from anywhere else, but from the tree hole where Yun Ruoyan and Liemo were. "How's your injury?" Yun Ruoyan whispered to Liemo, judging from the two demonic beast voices. Their cultivation wasn't particularly high. If Yun Ruoyan hadn't been injured, she could have easily dealt with 5 or 6 of them at once. But now she only had a little bit of mental energy left and she couldn't use any spiritual energy at all. She was a completely helpless cripple. She could only place her hopes on Liemo. Liemo's injury had only just stabilized, and he needed a period of quiet cultivation to fully recover. If he were to use spiritual energy now, it would only worsen his injury. As a result, the two of them were still cripples. "Don't be afraid." Liemo lowered his head to look at Yun Ruoyan. Although she appeared calm, Liemo could still sense her nervousness. "I'm here, don't be afraid," Liemo continued. For some reason, as soon as she heard Liemo's voice, she didn't feel so afraid anymore. "I'm not afraid." Yun Ruoyan stood up from Liemo's lap and fished out a steel dagger from her pants. She stared at the tree hole, waiting for the demonic beast to stick its head out and strike first. "Put the dagger away." Liemo hurriedly stopped her. If she didn't use her spiritual energy, she definitely wouldn't be a match for the demonic beasts with brute force. Moreover, the demonic beasts were so tough that ordinary weapons wouldn't be able to cause much damage to them. Yun Ruoyan turned to Liemo, unsure of what he meant. "Listen to me and put the dagger away." "I have my ways," Liemo instructed. The two demonic beasts' footsteps were almost within reach. Yun Ruoyan frowned, decided to trust Liemo and put the dagger away. "Come and sit here." Liemo motioned for Yun Ruoyan to sit by his side, and she did so without hesitation. Just then another voice came from outside. "Brother, something's not right. There's an unfamiliar smell here," a shrill voice called out. "An unfamiliar smell?" The coarse voice shouted angrily. "Which blind fool dares to occupy my territory? Are you tired of living?" Along with the sound, a thick leg stepped into the tree hole. Chapter 110. Following that, a huge head popped out from behind the thick leg. Yun Ruoyan could see that the creature that had just entered had a black face and fangs, large ears, small black eyes, and a few tufts of yellow hair on its head. It was a black boar spirit. "Which sector you from? How dare you occupy my cave?" The boar spirit shouted, glaring at them. Yun Ruoyan glanced at the boar spirit and immediately lowered her head. Liemo's voice rang out by her ear. "Brother, my wife and I were just passing by when it got dark. We wanted to set up camp, but it wasn't too peaceful here, so we decided to find a place to rest for the night." "Where did you come from, beasts?" A shrill voice rang out from under the boar's armpit. Yun Ruoyan raised her head slightly to see a yellow-haired, pointy-mouthed head squeezing its way into the boar's armpit. A yellow-skinned spirit. The tree hole wasn't small, and Yun Ruoyan could easily fit 4 or 5 people into it. However, the boar spirit was so large that it was already quite cramped even with only half of its body inside. Yun Ruoyan couldn't imagine how these two beasts would be able to rest in a tree hole like this. "We came from the Xianfeng Mountains in the south," Liemo replied. "My wife and I were originally cultivating on Mount Xianfeng, but not long ago, our residence was taken over by a peak 8th rank blade master. He even threatened to kill us if we set foot on Mount Xianfeng." Liemo sighed. "All the good lands in the east have been taken over by human cultivators, and we had no choice but to move west, hoping to find a quiet place to continue our cultivation." The boar spirit spat on the ground. Humans are getting more and more arrogant by the day. Sooner or later I'll eat their flesh and drink their blood. Sigh. The yellow-skinned spirit sighed. When the Beast King was still around we could barely get by. But ever since he ascended to the heavens, we've been chased around by the humans. Let alone cultivating, it's hard for us to even survive. Isn't that so? Li Mo's tone was mournful and forlorn. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but turn to look at him, only to be shocked once more. Li Mo's appearance had completely changed. His black robes had turned yellow and his inky black hair had turned red. His hair was loosely tied behind his head, revealing a pair of pointy ears. He looked like a fox spirit. Yun Ruoyan slowly reached out to touch herself. Indeed, her appearance had changed. She didn't know if her facial features had changed, but her two pointy ears couldn't be faked. Yun Ruoyan was shocked. In the past she had only known how to cultivate, thinking that she could become a truly strong cultivator through constant cultivation. She hadn't expected such a miraculous transformation technique to exist in this world. It seemed that there were still many things about cultivation that she and even most cultivators didn't know about. My wife and I would like to stay here for the night and leave tomorrow morning. Would you be so kind as to accommodate us? Guillemot asked. The boar and weasel glanced at each other, then at the beast core that Yun Ruoyan had used to illuminate the area. Sure, the yellow-skinned man said, but you can't stay here for free. Li Mo immediately picked up the two cores from the ground and handed them over, saying, These are the cores of the night demon leopard that my wife and I hunted in Xian Mountain. I'll give them to you as a reward. The yellow-skinned man smiled and put the two inner cores into his arms. Hee hee. The black pig spirit laughed and said, Since Old Tree let you in, it means that you're not bad people. Am I right, Old Tree? As the black boar spirit spoke, he used his hand to knock on the tree hole. Then the entire tree suddenly shook. Then the tree hole suddenly grew larger and the black pig and weasel walked in easily. The space inside the cave had also increased. The originally cramped tree hole had suddenly expanded by more than 3 times. There was more than enough space for the black boar spirit and the yellow-skinned man to enter. Only then did Yun Ruoyan realize that they were in the belly of an old tree spirit. The black boar spirit sat down by Li Mo's side and placed a cloth sack on the ground. You two sure are lucky to have run into us, brothers. If you'd run into those spirits, you'd be in trouble. That's right, the yellow-skinned man added. The yellow-skinned man continued, Even we are afraid of those monsters. They form groups and wander in the forest at night. They will pounce on anything they see. They will either possess the body or absorb the essence of the body. If not for the old tree's protection, we wouldn't even dare come back at night, the black boar spirit replied. Yun Ruoyan had only heard of the forest of dead souls, but she hadn't expected it to be so chaotic. We're at the foot of the imperial capital. Why haven't any of these spirits been kept in check? Hearing Yun Ruoyan's words, the black boar and weasel looked at each other. Then the black boar turned to Li Mo, Woman, why do you sound so human? Li Mo hurriedly explained, In the past, we'd often transform into humans to roam the human world, so we've picked up some of their habits. Please don't take it to heart. Only then did the yellow-skinned demon shift his gaze away from Yun Ruoyan. This isn't a good habit. We're no longer under the protection of the Beast King a few decades ago. Beasts like us can roam freely in the human world. Now the human realm has completely treated us as prey. Hurry up and tell your wife to change these human habits, the black boar spirit urged. Afraid that she'd say something that would expose her identity, Yun Ruoyan stayed silent by Li Mo's side. Li Mo brought out a few flasks of wine and handed one each to the black boar spirit and the weasel spirit. The 3 of them drank happily. Yun Ruoyan was very puzzled. What was this Li Mo's true identity? One moment he'd conjured a dragon's claw, the next he'd turned into a fox spirit and even herself. In that case, was he a human, a dragon, or a fox spirit? Moreover, Li Mo didn't seem to have any trouble interacting with the 2 beasts at all. It was clear that he often interacted with such creatures. If he were a human, why would he be so cold to humans but so warm to these beasts? Rumble, rumble. While Yun Ruoyan was thinking about these questions, her stomach began to protest. She'd only had a bowl of rice porridge in the morning and she hadn't eaten anything since then. She was famished. Li Mo turned to look at Yun Ruoyan. Just as he was about to speak, the black boar spirit spoke up. I've drunk your wine so I can't be stingy. Let's go slaughter that fellow right now and get some food for you. Yun Ruoyan looked at the black boar spirit who had stood up. His head was right at the top of the tree hole, and in his hand was the sack he'd tossed on the ground. Weasel, start the fire and roast the meat. The yellow-skinned man sighed and started to light a fire. The black boar spirit carried the sack in his hand to a corner of the tree hole, squatted down and began to untie the straps that bound the sack. Yun Ruoyan was curious as to what was in the sack that would make these two beasts so excited. She tilted her head to take a look. Liemo turned around, blocking Yun Ruoyan's line of sight. He lowered his voice and whispered into her ear, "You'd better not look." "Why?" "Because you won't like it," Liemo replied. The more ambiguous Liemo was, the more curious Yun Ruoyan became. She stubbornly tilted her head to the side, and her gaze brushed past Liemo's back. She watched as the black boar spirit opened the sack and pulled out a person. "Ah." "Ahem." Liemo coughed loudly, silencing Yun Ruoyan's exclamation. "Are they going to kill someone to eat?" Yun Ruoyan asked, her voice filled with fear. Liemo didn't speak, only nodding. "If they're going to eat someone, we..." Yun Ruoyan subconsciously tried to stop him, but Liemo pressed down on her shoulder and shook his head. Although Yun Ruoyan had lived 2 lives and had been persecuted, humiliated and suffered great pain and suffering, she had never seen true bloodshed. She had always wanted to kill Pei Zio, but she had never had the opportunity to do so. As a result, she had never seen human blood before. But tonight Yun Ruoyan had seen murder for the first time. The man was grabbed by the boar spirit as if he were a chicken. He was dressed in a warrior's robe, and he was likely a cultivator with a high cultivation. However, his arms and legs had been broken and he couldn't resist at all. Fortunately, Yun Ruoyan didn't recognize this man. "Don't kill me, don't kill me." That person was beaten until he was half dead. Seeing the black pig spirit pull out a shining butcher's knife from his waist, he was so frightened that he could not help but beg for mercy. Heh heh. The black boar spirit seemed to enjoy this person's begging for mercy. He looked at him and said, "You are a demon hunter, so you should focus on catching demons. Why are you doing the business of dealing with demons?" The man was so frightened that he didn't have the energy to answer the boar's question. All he could do was beg for his life. "It's been a long time since I've tasted human flesh. I didn't want to eat you, but you've killed so many of my kind and skinned so many yellow-skinned ones. If I don't eat you back, I'll be in big trouble." The boar spirit didn't waste any more words and slashed down. With a poochie sound, the man's begging turned into a blood-curdling scream, and then there was no more sound. Yun Ruoyan subconsciously grabbed Limeau's arm tightly, but her eyes stubbornly stared in the boar spirit's direction. The warrior lay silently on the ground and a large amount of blood flowed onto the ground. Very quickly, it seeped into the ground, leaving not a single trace behind. Presumably it had been absorbed by the old tree. The boar spirit waved his cleaver around the man's body, beginning to dismember him like a butcher. Yun Ruoyan finally couldn't bear to watch any longer. She turned around, her hand still tightly clinging to Limeau's arm. "Don't worry, there'll be barbecued meat soon." The yellow-skinned man was still fanning the flames, drooling from the corners of his mouth to the ground. Yun Ruoyan felt her stomach churn and she couldn't help but want to vomit. Chapter 111. The sound of the blade cutting into flesh resounded in the tree hole, and the stench of human blood became thicker and thicker in this small space. Finally, Yun Ruoyan couldn't take it anymore and began to retch. In the imperial territory, Yun Ruoyan had seen rivers of blood and she had seen corpses. However, the blood had belonged to magical beasts, and the corpses had been killed in a single blow. Now, however, the black boar was brandishing his blade as if he were chopping up a chicken or duck on a chopping board, preparing to roast it. Liemo patted Yun Ruoyan's back lightly. Yun Ruoyan turned to look at him. Seeing that his expression was as calm as ever, she guessed that he must have seen something like this before. It was said that the army often fed human flesh to beasts, and the beasts that ate human flesh would become even more ferocious on the battlefield. Liemo had entered the army before the age of 10, so it was no surprise that human flesh was a common sight. It was also said that there were ruffians in the army who liked to eat human flesh. When they caught the leader of an enemy, they would chop him into minced meat, mix it with porridge and then share it with the rest of the army. Apparently Lin Qingxue had told this story to Yun Ruoyan, and Lin Qingxue had heard it from Uncle Lin. When Uncle Lin was young, he had accompanied Lin Zainan in the army for a long period of time. He said that when the army was short of rations, human porridge was a great source of nourishment. Yun Ruoyan's gaze landed on Li Mo's lips. His thin lips were pursed and the corners of his mouth were curled up as if he were smiling. Yun Ruoyan's brows furrowed as she imagined Li Mo eating human porridge. Her stomach churned even more as she imagined it. "I don't want to eat that meat," Yun Ruoyan whispered, averting her gaze. The smile on Li Mo's face grew wider. From the first time he had seen Yun Ruoyan, she had remained calm and composed as if nothing could cause her to panic. This was the first time Li Mo had seen Yun Ruoyan in such pain. Li Mo couldn't help but want to tease Yun Ruoyan a little. Human flesh is so tender that it melts in your mouth, and it's even tastier than most animal meat. It'd be a pity if you didn't try it. When Yun Ruoyan heard this, she felt a sour feeling rise up from her stomach and she couldn't help but retch twice. At this time, the black boar spirit had already brought over the processed human flesh and was ready to roast it over the fire. Out of the corner of her eye, Yun Ruoyan glanced at the 2 ears strung on the wooden stick. She immediately closed her eyes, but she couldn't stop the image of arms and legs being roasted over a fire in her mind. She really couldn't stay here any longer. Just as she was about to stand up and leave, Li Mo placed a hand on her shoulder. "What happened to your wife?" While the black boar was busy, he turned his big head and asked, "You don't look good. Are you starving?" "Hee, don't worry, I'll leave the fattest thigh for you later." Yun Ruoyan immediately covered her mouth and started retching again. "Why are you vomiting?" The black boar looked at Yun Ruoyan suspiciously. As Li Mo gently patted Yun Ruoyan's back, he smiled. "My wife's expecting and her appetite hasn't been very good lately." "Oh, I see." The boar spirit didn't suspect a thing and continued working. "In that case, I'll prepare some lean meat for your wife later." Just as Yun Ruoyan was worrying about what to do next, she suddenly heard footsteps in the distance. Not good. The weasel, who had been squatting by the side, turned around warily and looked at the dark forest outside the tree hole. "This smells so fragrant that it's attracted that annoying fellow." "Old tree, close the door." The black boar spirit raised his head and barked at the top of the tree hole. The tree trembled and the tree hole closed like the jaws of a wild beast. "Brother, that fellow has already smelled it." "I'm afraid he won't be so easily fooled," the weasel told the boar spirit. "Tui." The black boar spirit spat a mouthful of saliva into the fire and said angrily, "What is this? Once it sees you, it swallows you whole, not even bones are left. Sooner or later I will eat its flesh and drink its blood." Yun Ruoyan didn't know what the black boar and weasel were talking about, but she was grateful to it now. She hurried over and snatched all the human flesh away. The footsteps soon reached the outside of the big tree, and then came the sound of knocking on the tree. "Black boar spirit, weasel." A loud voice called from outside the tree. "Grandpa knows you're inside, but you didn't even show your filial piety to your grandpa. You're trying to eat all the delicious food for yourself." Seeing that the boar and weasel were both silent, Yun Ruoyan turned to Li Mo. Li Mo frowned, his expression serious. "What's outside?" Yun Ruoyan asked softly. "It's a bear spirit," Li Mo replied. "From the sound of its voice, it's probably already cultivated an inner core." "An inner core? Do beasts have inner cores?" Yun Ruoyan only knew that beast had inner cores, but she didn't know that beasts could also cultivate one. Li Mo nodded but didn't explain much. Instead, he lowered his voice and said, "I can't use too much spiritual energy right now, so the illusion I'm using isn't very profound. I'm afraid the bear spirit will see through the illusion, so hide behind me and don't show your face." Only then did Yun Ruoyan realize that she and Li Mo hadn't transformed into foxes. Rather, it was Li Mo's illusions that had fooled everyone, including Yun Ruoyan herself, into thinking that she had transformed into a fox spirit. "Quick, get this old tree spirit to open the door." The black bear spirit continued pounding on the tree, causing it to tremble. "Otherwise, I'll set fire to the tree." As soon as the black bear spirit finished speaking, before anyone could react, the tree hole opened. "Hey, you old tree spirit, you traitor!" The boar and weasel cursed in unison. "Ha!" The black bear spirit laughed heartily as it walked into the tree hole. As it walked in, the tree hole expanded even more. Even the space within the hole expanded once more. Brother Black Bear, why aren't you asleep at this hour? The weasel trembled as he approached the Black Bear spirit. Yun Ruoyan had already hidden behind Liemo, and she stuck her head out to look at the hole. A large black figure stood there, its entire body covered in black fur, with only a piece of black cloth tied around its waist. Humph! The Black Bear spirit snorted. I wanted to leave a mouthful for you two brats, but since you're so untactful, you'll have to wait to taste the wind. The Black Bear spirit stretched out a big black paw and swept at the yellow-skinned man. The skinny yellow-skinned man was slapped into the wall of the tree hole. He fell down and curled up into a ball, not daring to make a sound. Take whatever you want, but don't touch me, the boar spirit ordered. In the entire forest of dead souls, you two are the most dishonest. The Black Bear spirit pointed a thick black finger at the Black Pig spirit and said, if you dare to eat alone again, I'll skin the two of you to go with my wine. The boar spirit glared at the Black Bear but didn't dare make a sound. The Black Bear spirit flattened the bonfire with a few stomps and gathered all the human meat on the fire, as well as the meat that hadn't been roasted yet. Yun Ruoyan looked at the meat and relaxed a little. Hurry up and take it all, don't leave anything behind. Just as the Black Bear was about to leave, he suddenly sniffed the air as if he had smelled something. He turned his head and asked, are there any strangers here? Neither the boar nor the weasel replied, but the Black Bear's eyes had already landed on Liemo, who was still in the corner. Where did you come from, fox spirit? The Black Bear asked. Liemo bowed and respectfully repeated what he had said to the boar and weasel. The Black Bear listened to Liemo's words, but he didn't make a sound. His entire body, including his face, was pitch black and it was impossible to see his expression. The Black Bear didn't make a sound and neither did the others. After a long while, the Black Bear suddenly asked, who's behind you? The Black Bear was asking who it was, not what kind of animal it was. Had they been discovered? Yun Ruoyan immediately heard the difference in the Black Bear's tone, and she tightened her grip on Liemo's arm. Liemo, however, didn't seem nervous at all. That's my wife. She's pregnant and she's feeling a little unwell. Your wife? The Black Bear clearly didn't believe him. Why does she smell like a human? My wife and I often wander around the human world, so we've caught the scent of humans, Liemo explained. They're indeed two fox spirits, but they're only here temporarily. They'll leave tomorrow, the boar spirit added. Right, they're just passing by. There's nothing suspicious about them, the weasel chimed in. The Black Bear glanced at them, then at Liemo before finally turning to leave. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. But just then the Black Bear spirit suddenly retracted its foot that had already stepped forward. No, my nose has never been wrong. There's indeed the scent of a living person here, and a very fragrant one at that. The Black Bear muttered to himself before walking up to Leo. Have your wife come out, I want to examine her. What, you don't dare. Seeing that Liemo didn't move, the Black Bear roared, Little fox spirit, how dare you hide human flesh? Are you tired of living? The Black Bear thought that Liemo was hiding someone just like the other beasts, and it extended its black claws at Liemo. How dare you? Liemo bellowed, his voice laced with a hint of authority. First the old tree spirit trembled, then the black boar spirit and the weasel spirit couldn't help but take 2 steps back. The Black Bear spirit was also forced to take a step back. I didn't expect you to be such a formidable character. The Black Bear only took a step back before regaining his footing. I've been trapped in this forest for a very long time, and I haven't met a worthy opponent. Today I'll spar with you. After the Black Bear spirit finished speaking, he let out a roar. His already huge body began to grow with this roar. Chapter 112. The Black Bear's rapidly growing body began to fill up the tree's hole. Stop, the boar and weasel cried out. If you keep growing, you'll burst the old tree. The Black Bear ignored them and continued to grow, its nose growing larger and its sense of smell becoming more sensitive. As it grew, it sniffed at the air, drool dripping from the corner of its mouth. Smells so good. The Black Bear's eyes shone with greed. It lowered its head and looked down at Liam. Little fox, who's hiding behind you? Why does it smell so good? I'm going to have a taste today. As soon as it finished speaking, the Black Bear spirit pounced on Liemo, its massive maw wide open. Thump! Li Mo's foot landed squarely on the black bear's chest, sending the bear's massive body flying. The old tree spirit's hole instantly expanded, and the black bear spirit's body flew out of the tree hole. "You're courting death." Li Mo growled coldly. Hiding behind Li Mo's back, Yun Ruian saw his yellow robe change color once more from yellow to silver. Even his hair, which had been tied up in a yellow bun, had turned silver. An aura far stronger than Yun Ruian could imagine emanated from Li Mo's body. Thump! The black bear flew far away, smashing through several large trees before landing with a loud crash. Because the sound was so loud, the entire forest of black ghosts seemed to tremble. The boar and weasel both stared at Li Mo dumbfounded. Li Mo turned his head slightly, a pair of icy blue eyes sweeping across them. The boar and weasel felt their legs go limp and they knelt down, trembling all over. Yun Ruian, who was standing behind Li Mo, also stared in shock. No matter how strong her mental fortitude was, it was hard for her to digest the shock of Li Mo's transformation and his powerful aura. Li Mo turned around, his gaze finally landing on Yun Ruian. Sensing Li Mo's gaze, Yun Ruian slowly raised her head, only to meet a pair of icy blue eyes and a devilishly beautiful face. That face gave Yun Ruian a sense of familiarity, but at the same time a sense of unfamiliarity. Enveloped by that icy blue gaze, a pair of eyes that often appeared in her dreams flashed through her mind. They were also icy blue, and they emitted a cold light that had been silently watching her for countless nights. "Is that you?" Yun Ruian suddenly asked. "What?" Li Mo raised his silver-white eyebrows. "Who? Were you the man at the flower viewing party that day?" Yun Ruian blurted out. Li Mo's lips curled up into a smile. Damn it! This woman actually remembered. Li Mo had thought that Yun Ruian would have forgotten about him once she was cured of the poison. That night, Li Mo had never been in such a sorry state before. It was rare for him to have feelings for a woman. At the height of his passion, he was plotted against and thrown to float on the surface of the lake for half a day. Li Mo didn't want anyone else to know of his sorry state, including Yun Ruian. "No," Li Moheo replied coldly. Yun Ruian opened her mouth to ask more, but Li Mo interrupted her. "I'm injured and I won't be able to hold on much longer. Let's go." Li Mo grabbed Yun Ruian's hand and stepped out of the tree hole. But in this short period of time at least 100 beasts had gathered outside the tree hole. In the darkness of the night there were green eyes everywhere. Apart from the beasts, there was also a group of will-o'-the-wisps floating around. "Who are you?" This question came from the black bear spirit. Li Mo didn't answer its question and the black bear continued in a low voice. "Why do you have the aura of the Beast King? Who are you?" "Get out of my way," Li Mo replied coldly. "I don't want to start a massacre. If you don't want to die, scram." Because of Li Mo's powerful aura, none of the beasts dared to approach him, but they didn't seem to have any intention of retreating either. They all seemed to listen to the black bear spirit's commands, and if he didn't give the order they wouldn't retreat. The black bear spirit, however, stubbornly stood in front of Li Mo and Yun Ruian like a wall. Roar. Li Mo opened his mouth and let out a dragon's roar, a sound that could shake one's heart. As the black bear howled, he slowly retreated until he knelt down. Then all of the beasts around him knelt down, bowing their heads to Li Mo. "Long live the Beast King! Long live the Beast King!" The black bear spirit opened its mouth to call out, and all the other spirits also began to call out along with it. One call after another, the black ghost forest was filled with the sounds of worship. Yun Ruian's shock was at its peak. Too many questions intertwined in her head and she couldn't make heads or tails of them. "Sco." Li Mo's voice suddenly sounded by her ear, and Yun Ruian felt her body lighten as she was lifted into the air by Li Mo. "Beast King, don't go. Beast King will forever be loyal to you. Beast King, come back." The two of them stepped on green sword auras and quickly rose into the air, leaving behind the cries for the Beast King. Li Mo directed the sword to fly in the direction of the eastern capital. As soon as they exited the forest, they could see the moonlight. A strand of silver-white hair brushed against Yun Ruian's face. Yun Ruian reached out and grabbed the strand of hair. "Who are you?" "The Slaughtering King, Li Mo. Other than that," Yun Ruian continued, "do you have another identity?" Li Mo didn't respond. Clearly, he didn't want to answer her question. "Who exactly are you?" Yun Ruoyan's curiosity compelled her to ask again. Li Mo finally spoke. On the Qinyuan continent, everyone who knows my true identity is dead and everyone who's seen my true face is also dead. So your life is mine now. As he spoke, a cold hand slowly tightened around Yun Ruoyan's neck. As the hand tightened around her neck, Yun Ruoyan began to feel suffocated. You won't kill me, Yun Ruoyan said. I won't kill you? Li Mo's cold voice carried a hint of amusement, but Yun Ruoyan couldn't decipher the meaning behind it. There was mockery, but it wasn't just mockery. Why are you so sure? Li Mo's amusement had turned into laughter. But surely it wasn't because of Yun Ruoyan's beauty. Cough, cough. Since you've spent so much effort to save me, of course you won't kill me. The large hand continued to tighten, and the feeling of suffocation grew stronger and stronger. Yun Ruoyan began to cough dryly. Haven't you heard others say that the slaughtering king acts on a whim? Li Mo continued to squeeze Yun Ruoyan's neck. Since I've spent so much effort to save you, I can kill you whenever I want. Yun Ruoyan's vision began to blur, and the bright moon on the horizon began to darken. Am I going to die just like this? I can't accept this. Yun Ruoyan finally closed her eyes. But at this time there was a violent shaking under the feet. The azure light sword seemed to have lost control and started to shake randomly. By then Li Mo's hand had lost its strength and it slid off Yun Ruoyan's neck. Then, as if his entire body had lost its strength, he fell from the sword. Yun Ruoyan didn't know whether to rejoice or cry. Li Mo had actually fainted. Without Li Mo's command, the sword turned into a streak of green light and burrowed into Li Mo's body. But Yun Ruoyan was held tightly in Li Mo's arms as they plummeted. Hey, wake up. We're going to fall to our deaths. Yun Ruoyan screamed, but Li Mo didn't react at all. There was no way they could survive a fall from such a height. Thankfully, there was someone to cushion their fall. The wind whistled past Yun Ruoyan's ears. She shut her eyes tightly, her arms subconsciously tightening around Li Mo's splash. Just as Yun Ruoyan thought she was doomed, the two of them fell into the water, creating a huge splash. Unprepared, Yun Ruoyan's mouth and nose were filled with water and she couldn't stop coughing. Her hands and feet were bound by Li Mo and she couldn't move at all. The two of them began to sink. After drinking a few mouthfuls of water, Yun Ruoyan understood her situation and quickly calmed down. She held her breath and used all her strength to pull away from Li Mo's hand. Just as Yun Ruoyan couldn't hold it in any longer, she finally pried Li Mo's hand away. Before pushing Li Mo away, Yun Ruoyan glanced back. At the bottom of the dark water, Li Mo's long silver hair spread out, and his silver-white robes billowed in the water. He looked like a sleeping silver dragon. The dull pain in her chest made Yun Ruoyan unable to stay any longer. She kicked her legs with all her might and her body swam toward the surface. At the same time, Li Mo's body began to slowly sink toward the bottom. Finally out of the water, Yun Ruoyan took in large gulps of air to relieve the pain in her chest caused by holding her breath for so long. Her neck and throat were also stinging from Li Mo's grip. After a while, Yun Ruoyan looked at her surroundings. She was surrounded by a large lake rippling with water. About 70 to 80 feet away it was pitch black. That should be the shore. Yun Ruoyan spread her arms and began to swim toward the shore, but after a few strokes she stopped. Li Mo's voice rang out in her mind. Don't be afraid. I'm here, don't be afraid. In both of her lives, this was the first time someone had told her not to be afraid when she was weak and helpless. With him around she wouldn't have to be afraid. Reason told her that she couldn't save him, because Li Mo would likely kill her to keep her quiet. However, a voice in her heart kept telling her, hurry up and save him or you'll regret it. Yun Ruoyan slapped the surface of the water hard, took a deep breath and dove back into the water. Chapter 113. Yun Ruoyan dove back into the water. Visibility was poor in the water, and Yun Ruoyan didn't see any trace of Li Mo. She wanted to dive down to the bottom of the lake to search for Li Mo, but the robe she was wearing was too much of a hindrance. Anxious, Yun Ruoyan floated to the surface of the water and tore off the clothes she was wearing, leaving only her undergarments. Then she took a deep breath and dove back into the water. This time she dove all the way to the bottom of the lake. Finally, she saw a silvery figure in the water and she swam toward it with all her might. Li Mo lay silently at the bottom of the lake. In a short time, a large school of strange fish had gathered around him. Yun Ruan couldn't see what those fish looked like, but they were all large and black, at least 3 times the size of a normal fish. Yun Ruan tried to get close to Li Mo, but the school of fish actually attacked her. Yun Ruan knew that there were man-eating fish lurking in the deep waters of the lake. Yun Ruan pulled out her dagger and swung it around to chase the fish away. After much effort, Yun Ruan grabbed Li Mo and swam toward the surface of the lake. Those fish weren't easy to deal with. Although they didn't attack Yun Ruan and Li Mo as a group, they surrounded them. One of the fish even suddenly attacked Yun Ruan, biting the dagger in her hand and trying to snatch it away from her. Yun Ruan was so angry that she lost all strength in her hands, and the dagger was snatched away by a large fish. Because of the strength in her hands, Yun Ruan's anger dissipated. She gulped down a mouthful of water and her head began to feel dizzy. Just then, Li Mo suddenly opened his eyes, his icy blue irises glowing like gemstones in the water. The large fish immediately retreated when they saw the icy blue light. Yun Ruan's head felt dizzy. With a burst of strength that she didn't know she had, she finally managed to drag Li Mo out of the water. Yun Ruan rushed out of the lake, gasping for air as she hugged Li Mo tightly and swam toward the shore. When they finally reached the shore, she used the last of her strength to drag Li Mo ashore, then sat down on the shore, coughing and panting. Once again, Yun Ruan felt how pitiful it was to be a commoner without spiritual energy. After recovering some of her strength, she went to check on Li Mo's condition. Looking at his peaceful face and even breathing, it was no different from sleeping. Once she was sure that Li Mo was fine, she sat down on the shore once more. After resting for a while longer and gathering more energy, she climbed up and pulled Li Mo higher up the shore. "You're really heavy." Every 2 steps, Yun Ruan had to catch her breath. After about 15 minutes, she finally managed to pull Li Mo to a flat, dry, and secluded spot. Yun Ruan was hungry, tired, and drenched in sweat. Although it was a summer night, she still felt a chill in her heart. Yun Ruan forced herself to her feet and surveyed the terrain around her. She found that her surroundings were quite spacious, and there were no trees in sight. Without the forest, there would be no more spirits. Relieved, she hugged her knees and sat down beside Li Mo. Exhaustion overwhelmed her, and her body tilted to one side. Finally, she collapsed onto Li Mo's body and fell asleep. Su Bei led a squad of black-robed guards and began searching westward from the Yun Manor. Finally, they found Li Mo and Yun Ruan at dawn. At the time, Li Mo had just woken up, but Yun Ruan was in a deep sleep. She was only wearing a thin inner garment. After a night's sleep, Yun Ruan's entire body was cold, and Li Mo sat up with her in his arms. A silver-robed Li Mo was hugging a woman as they leaned against a slope. The morning sun shone down on them, gilding them with a layer of gold. This was the scene that Su Bei saw when he found Li Mo. "Your Highness, I'm late." A squad of 7 or 8 black-robed guards stood far away, and Su Bei knelt in front of Li Mo. "You're not late." Li Mo's tone carried a hint of delight, one that was rare to see from His Highness. Su Bei couldn't help but raise his head to look at Li Mo. Indeed, he was smiling. Su Bei didn't know what had happened to make Li Mo so happy, but he guessed that it had something to do with the woman in Li Mo's arms. "Your Highness, is this the second miss of the Yun family?" Su Bei asked. Li Mo nodded. "Has she seen Your Highness's true appearance?" Li Mo nodded again. Su Bei hesitated, but he still asked. "According to past rules, anyone who has seen Your Highness's true appearance has to be silenced. How should we deal with the second miss?" Li Mo looked at the rising sun in the east. "As long as she doesn't abandon me, I won't kill her. I'll bring her back to the manor and take good care of her." After sleeping for an unknown period of time, Yun Ruan finally woke up, but she didn't want to open her eyes. The soft sensation beneath her was so comfortable that she didn't want to wake up. Just then, a pair of eyes appeared in her mind, a pair of icy blue eyes staring straight at her. Yun Ruan opened her eyes in shock, completely awake. The first thing she saw was a violet drapery, a soft bed, and the sound of birds chirping by her ear. It should be early in the morning. Yun Ruan surveyed her surroundings. She was in an unfamiliar room, but it was elegantly decorated. Just like her own bedchamber, it was divided into an inner and outer room. Yun Ruan was currently sleeping in the inner bedroom, and a small sitting room was separated by a beaded curtain. Where was this? Where was Li Mo? Why was he here? Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but feel suspicious. She lifted her blanket and was about to get off the bed when she realized that she was only wearing her undergarments. Frowning, she wrapped herself tightly with the blanket again. Liamo, are you there? Is anyone there? Yun Ruoyan tried calling out. With a creak, the outer door opened and an unfamiliar woman walked in. Monsieur awake. The woman called out to Yun Ruoyan, placing a neatly folded set of light green clothes and a similarly colored veil on Yun Ruoyan's bedside table. Yun Ruoyan could see that the woman was about 17 or 18 years old, with a slender figure and a beautiful face. She wore a light blue dress without any makeup or jewels. She didn't look like a madam or a young mistress, but she didn't seem like a maid either. Seeing Yun Ruoyan's dazed expression, the woman smiled. Miss, your clothes are all wet. I helped you change them. Yun Ruoyan's heart calmed down when she heard this. Who's this sister? And where am I? She didn't know where she was, but seeing that the woman was being polite, she behaved obediently. This is the Slaughtering King's manor, the woman replied. My name is Li Luo and I was sent by the Slaughtering King to take care of you, Mississippi. The Slaughtering King's manor? Yun Ruoyan seemed to suddenly realize something. Is this Li Mo's manor? Yes, miss, this is the Slaughtering King's manor. Li Luo smiled. These are the clothes that His Highness had me prepare for you. Please try them on and see if they fit. Where's Liamo? Yun Ruoyan blurted out. He seems to have suffered some serious injuries. Is he all right? As Yun Ruoyan asked this question, she subconsciously touched her neck. Liamo had strangled her quite viciously, and she wasn't sure if he'd left any marks. His Highness did suffer some serious internal injuries, Li Luo replied. But he'll be fine after a period of seclusion. Knowing that Liamo was fine, Yun Ruoyan felt a strange sense of relief. Logically speaking, she should have hoped that something bad would happen to him, given how heavily he had injured her. However, not only had Yun Ruoyan chosen to save Liamo, but she had also subconsciously cared for him. Yun Ruoyan's explanation for her actions was, after all, this fellow had helped me before. If he hadn't rushed over to save me, he wouldn't have ended up well in the hands of that demonic Taoist, so I decided to save his life and call it even. We don't owe each other anything. Yun Ruoyan put on the clothes that Li Luo had prepared for her and walked up to the crystal mirror. When she saw her appearance, she jumped in fright. Of course, her complexion was unsightly, but there was a visible scratch on the right side of her face that was no less frightening than a birthmark. Yun Ruoyan recalled that she had most likely scratched it herself. His Highness asked me to give these to you, Mississippi. Li Luo placed a white porcelain bottle and a jade bottle on the dressing table. Miss, the wound on your face isn't light, but as long as you apply these regularly, you'll be able to recover quickly. Yun Ruoyan picked up the white jade bottle and placed it under her nose to sniff. A familiar fragrance wafted into her nose. It was the fish oil snow lotus stamen nectar. Needless to say, that bottle was the deep-sea mud cream that cleansed the complexion and whitened the scars. Yun Ruoyan had already used up the previous 2 bottles, and if Li Luo hadn't brought this one out, she would have forgotten that she still owed Liamo for giving her the cream. As a result, Yun Ruoyan felt much better about her rash decision to save Liamo. As expected, there was indeed a red mark on Yun Ruoyan's neck. Fortunately, the clothes that Li Luo had prepared were collared and buttoned all the way up to her chin. After washing up, Li Luo told Yun Ruoyan that someone wanted to see her, so Yun Ruoyan followed Li Luo out of the room and into a garden. There was a pavilion in the garden and a black-robed man was sitting in it. Li Luo bowed to Yun Ruoyan before leaving. Yun Ruoyan walked toward the pavilion. Hearing her footsteps, the black-robed man turned around. It was none other than the 3rd prince, Li Qianhan. Are you feeling better? Li Qianhan smiled at Yun Ruoyan. I'm lucky. Yun Ruoyan walked over and sat directly across from Li Qianhan. On the table were mung bean cakes, honeysuckle, and biscuits sandwiched with phoenix stamens. There was also a white porcelain bowl with a lid, but Yun Ruoyan didn't know what was in it. Yun Ruoyan didn't stand on ceremony. She dug into the cakes, biscuits without a care for her image. Your table manners are really... Li Qianhan shook his head with a smile as he scooped a bowl of white fungus soup for Yun Ruoyan. Eat slowly, don't choke. Yun Ruoyan took the bowl of soup and took a sip without even thanking him. The soup was neither hot nor cold and it was sweet and refreshing. I guess that you'd like to eat meat, But uncle wouldn't let me prepare any for you, Li Qianhan continued. But I'm relieved to see you enjoying it so much. Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected Li Mo to be such a meticulous person, but she didn't believe that anyone would treat her unconditionally. Apart from food and clothing, did the slaughtering king have any other requests? Chapter 114. Li Qianhan nodded. He wants you to keep this a secret or else. I don't like to spread other people's secrets, Yun Ruoyan interrupted him. Although she was still curious about Li Mo's true identity, and even had the urge to ask Li Qianhan about it, she chose not to. Whether Li Mo was human or not, whether he was the slaughtering king or the beast king, what did that have to do with Yun Ruoyan? She was just a little girl and all she had to do was be herself and become stronger. What did others have to do with her? I hope you remember what you said today. If I ever find out that you've spoken of this secret to anyone, both you and that person will die. Li Qianhan's tone was very serious. Li Qianhan wasn't a serious person, and the fact that he was so serious was a clear indication of the severity of the situation. Before Li Qianhan could speak, Yun Ruoyan swore an oath in the name of the gods, and Li Qianhan nodded in satisfaction. Also, you saved him last night. Uncle said that he doesn't owe anyone favors, so he'll make you a promise. As long as it's within his power, he'll do his best to satisfy you. Don't ever turn him down. The slaughtering king's promises are very valuable. Li Qianhan had said this because Yun Ruoyan had once refused Li Mo's medicine, but that was because she didn't know Li Mo's identity and motives. Yun Ruoyan definitely wouldn't turn him down now, and there was something she needed his help with. I have a brother named Yun Xiao. My only condition is that the slaughtering king ensure his safety for the next 3 years. All right, I'll pass on your request to uncle, Li Qianhan said. After the meal, Li Qianhan personally sent Yun Ruoyan back to the Yun Manor. In a secret chamber in the slaughtering king's manor, Li Mo was sitting cross-legged, his eyes closed as he healed. Su Bei and Li Luo entered together. Su Bei reported, Your Highness, Miss Yun has already been sent home by the third master. Is she all right? Li Mo asked, his eyes still closed. Miss Yun's body is fine, but her mental energy has been affected by the poison. However, she's already taken the antidote, so she should be recovering soon. Li Mo nodded, and Su Bei and Li Luo left the room together. Master seems to treat this young lady very specially, Li Luo said casually. Su Bei turned to look at Li Luo, his voice as emotionless as ever. We only need to act according to your highness's wishes. There's no need to try to figure out your highness's intentions. Li Luo lowered her head and fell silent. At noon, Li Qianhan's carriage stopped in front of the Yun Manor. Second miss is back, second miss is back. When the servant at the door saw Yun Ruoyan disembark from the carriage, he yelled and ran toward the door, so enthusiastic that Yun Ruoyan was a little unaccustomed to it. Li Qianhan offered to send Yun Ruoyan into the manor, and she didn't refuse. Just as the two of them were about to enter the manor, the sound of galloping horses could be heard. From the sound of it, it seemed to be a group of a dozen or so horses. The horses galloped quickly, and in the time it took for Yun Ruoyan to turn her head, they had already reached the gates of the Yun Manor. Yun Ruoyan immediately spotted the youth on the flaming steed at the head of the pack. Yun Ruoyan recognized him immediately. He was dressed in dark red flexible armor, and had a heroic air about him. He was none other than Yun Ruoyan's brother Yun Xiao, whom she hadn't seen in many years. Brother! Yun Ruoyan blurted out. Yun Xiao didn't immediately recognize Yun Ruoyan, but the girl in front of him was dressed in a light green chiffon dress. Her jet-black hair was combed into a simple bun, and she wore a veil that matched the color of her dress on the right side of her face. Brother, it's me, Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan had already turned and was walking toward the youth's horse. Yun Xiao finally recognized Yun Ruoyan, and he dismounted and walked toward her. Brother, you're finally back. And I'm back. The two siblings stood facing each other, Yun Ruoyan crying tears of joy and Yun Xiao's eyes reddened. Yun Xiao was even more muscular and mature than the last time Yun Ruoyan had seen him, but his facial features hadn't changed much. As a result, Yun Ruoyan was able to recognize him immediately. Yun Ruoyan, on the other hand, had changed significantly. Not only had she grown taller, but her entire demeanor had changed. Yun Maxiao's impression of his sister was that of a timid, melancholy girl, and even her smile seemed to carry a shadow. But the Yun Ruoyan in front of him was smiling brightly, as if she were a sunflower under the sun. "Yun, you've changed. You've gotten prettier." Yun Maxiao reached out and smoothed out a strand of her hair that had been blown about by the wind. "Brother, you haven't changed at all. You're still as handsome as ever." Yun Ruoyan stood on her tiptoes and patted her brother's shoulder. The two siblings looked at each other and suddenly burst into laughter, their laughter traveling far into the Yun manor. "I won't disturb the two of you any longer," Li Qianhan said. He'd been afraid that Yun Ruoyan would be scolded upon returning to the manor, so he'd wanted to personally explain things to his brother. But now that Yun Maxiao was back and with him protecting Yun Ruoyan, no one would dare bully her. Yun Maxiao had spent most of his time in the army, so he wasn't familiar with Li Qianhan. After Yun Ruoyan introduced him, Yun Maxiao hurriedly bowed to Li Qianhan. Li Qianhan was naturally carefree and unrestrained, and he didn't care much for formalities. After exchanging a few words with Yun Maxiao, he left. "First young master, second miss, please enter the manor." The housekeeper, old Wu, walked out of the manor and urged Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao. "The old madam and the master are waiting for you in the great hall." The siblings chatted as they walked toward the great hall. Yun Maxiao told Yun Ruoyan that he'd arrived at the Yun manor last night. When he'd heard that Yun Ruoyan had been abducted to the west by a demon, he hadn't rested at all. "We chased them all the way to the forest of dead souls this morning," Yun Maxiao began. "I guessed that you'd been abducted into the forest, and just as I was about to enter the forest to find you, a fire suddenly broke out. There was clearly no wind, but the fire was so intense that the entire forest was ablaze." When Yun Ruoyan heard her brother's words, she was immediately certain that Li Mo had sent someone to start the fire, and that the 100-odd beasts in the forest had all seen Li Mo in person, so they'd all been silenced. It seemed that Li Mo's words were true. All those who'd seen him in person had died, save for Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but feel a little shocked. Knowing was one thing, but hearing it from Yun Maxiao's own ears was another. "Ruoyan, come and let grandmother take a look." The Yun matriarch's voice came from afar. Yun Ruoyan walked into the great hall and took the Yun matriarch's outstretched hand. "Grandmother, I'm fine. It was the slaughtering king who saved me." Yun Lan sighed in relief when she saw that Yun Ruoyan was safe and sound. "Yen, do you know where the slaughtering king is right now? He saved your life, so we should pay him a visit to thank him." The slaughtering king suffered some minor injuries from his duel with that demon, and he's currently recuperating. "It's not convenient for us to disturb him," Yun Lan replied. Her gaze landed on Madame and Yun Ruoyao and Yun Ruoyu, who were seated by her side. When Madame N and the others saw that Yun Ruoyan had returned safely, their expressions were quite interesting. Now they were doing their best to conceal the unease in their hearts. Yun Ruoyan looked straight at Madame N. "Mother, why are you still sitting here?" Yun Ruoyan's question was so sudden that everyone present was a little dazed, and none of them understood what she meant. "Ruoyan, I'm glad you're all right. You've been gone for an entire day and night and I've been worried sick." Madame N calmly replied, "Now that you're fine, I can finally relax. I'll be heading back to the Ruilan manor." Yun Ruoyan had to admire Madame Anne's ability to lie to her heart, but she just loved to expose her lies. "Mother," Yun Ruoyan began, "have you lost your memory? Have you forgotten how I was abducted by that demon?" Yun Ruoyan asked. Well. Madame An didn't know what to say. "Sister Ruoyan, Mother was also deceived by that Taoist," Yun Ruoyao explained. "Mother was only concerned about the peace of the family, so please don't blame Mother." "Ha!" Yun Ruoyan laughed out loud. Just by saying that she'd been tricked and that it was for the sake of the family's peace, he was able to wipe away all the shock she'd experienced over the past day and night. Surely it wasn't that easy? "Father, I have something to ask you, Mother," Yun Maxiao said before Yun Ruoyan could speak. Before Yun Lan could respond, Yun Maxiao turned to Madame, "And yesterday, I heard from my family that the demon who abducted Ruoyan was summoned by Mother. Mother even accused Ruoyan of being a demon at grandmother's birthday banquet, but it's been proven that Ruoyan isn't a demon. Mother, shouldn't you take some responsibility for your own mistakes?" Li Qianxia was used to being in the army and he was always straightforward with his words. Now that he had thrown this question at Madame An, It was up to her to see how she would respond. Mother, Yun Ruoyao wanted to continue defending Madame N, but Li Qianxiao snorted. I'm talking to mother. Who are you to interrupt? Yun Ruoyao was silenced by Li Qianxiao's words. Madame N hesitated for a long time before finally replying, It was indeed my mistake this time. And I'd like to apologize to you. Mother. Yun Ruoyan looked toward Madame N, You framed me like that. Do you think a mere apology will suffice? Grandmother. Yun Ruoyan turned to the Yun matriarch. I'm such a good person, but I was wrongly accused of being a vixen, and I was even injured by that demonic Taoist. Do you think that's enough for you to apologize? The Yun matriarch looked troubled. Although Madame N was at fault this time, she was still the matriarch of the household, and it wasn't appropriate for her to be punished so severely. She had already punished Yun Ruoyan for an entire night in the ancestral hall, but she hadn't expected Yun Ruoyan to suffer so much, and she wasn't about to let the matter rest so easily. Ruoyan, I've already punished your mother last night, Madame N continued. Madame N was still trying to gloss over this matter. You've been wandering around for an entire night, so you must be tired. Hurry back to your rooms and rest. Grandmother. Yun Ruoyan's tone suddenly turned serious. Everyone knows that mother didn't just make a mistake this time, because this has happened far too many times in the past. I've been holding back all this time, but all I've gotten in return is mother's pain. I don't want to hold back any longer. Grandmother, are you going to let mother harm me like before? Yun Ruoyan asked. Chapter 115. Yun Ruoyan's words were tantamount to openly declaring war on Madame N. In the past, Madame N and her cohorts had only used small tricks to harm Yun Ruoyan. At most they would punish her and embarrass her, but their ultimate goal was to remove Yun Ruoyan from her position and replace her with Yun Ruoyao. However, as Yun Ruoyan grew stronger and stronger, Madame N and her cohorts grew more and more uneasy, and their schemes grew more and more vicious. From the poisoning of the pavilion in the middle of the lake to the collusion with the demonic cultivators, each of these schemes was more than enough to kill Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan had focused all her attention on her cultivation, and her attitude toward Madame N and the others had always been to deal with whatever came her way. However, there was still a flaw in her plan. If not for Li Mo's timely arrival, the consequences would have been unimaginable. This danger couldn't be allowed to happen a second time, and Madame N and her cohorts couldn't afford to let it slide. Grandmother, I know that you truly love me, and that's why I'm begging you to give me justice. Yun Ruoyan pressed on. If I can't even get justice like this, then what's the point of me being a wife-born daughter? The Yun matriarch and Yun Lan had never seen Yun Ruoyan so agitated, and they didn't know how to respond. They knew that Yun Ruoyan wasn't lying. After all, they had once been Madame Anne's accomplices. But what was justice? As long as she was useful enough to the family, she would receive justice. If she was worthless, she wasn't worthy of justice. Yun Ruoyan had been unworthy of justice in the past. Although she now had the capital to demand justice, Yun Lan and the Yun matriarch didn't like the idea of bringing up old scores. A small punishment was fine, but it couldn't hurt the harmony of the family. In Yun Lan and the Yun matriarch's hearts, the harmony of the family was the most important, even if it was only on the surface. Madame Anne's expression was ugly. Ever since Yun Ruoyan had been abducted, although Yun Lan hadn't scolded her, he hadn't been kind to her. Last night, the Yun matriarch had punished her by sending her to the ancestral hall for an entire night. There was no precedent in the Yun family for a grandmother to be punished like this. That night, Madame Anne passed the night in a state of extreme depression. Now Yun Ruoyan was still pressing on as if she wouldn't give up until she got justice. Why? I'm supposed to be the Yun family's official daughter-in-law. Who does that Lin Yueme think she is? Why should I obediently hand over the position of first madam to her? Madame Anne thought, she's finally dead and I've reclaimed what was rightfully mine. But why does that ugly, useless daughter of hers still have the right to take my place? Madame Anne's guilty conscience immediately turned into one of grievance. Mother. Madame Anne choked out. It's said that it's hard to be a stepmother, but now I've seen it for myself. It was just a momentary lapse in judgment, but it was misunderstood as a premeditated murder. Misunderstanding? Yun Ruoyan smiled coldly. 3 years ago, when I was severely injured at the family's training arena, Peony begged Mother to find a physician. Although Mother agreed that she could, she kept dragging it out. If it wasn't for Third Inyang taking care of me day and night, I'm afraid I would have died then. Madame An opened her mouth to defend herself, but Yun Ruoyan didn't give her a chance to continue. And for the past 3 years, every single one of the sisters in the family has been given cloth and silver to make new clothes. But every time what's left over from the rippling brothel is tattered cloth, and only half as much as the others. Is this also a lapse in judgment, Mother? Yun Ruoyan looked at Madame An, waiting for her reply. There are so many Xians in the family, so it's only natural that the distribution is biased. Finally, Madame An had a chance to defend herself. As a result, every time there's a distribution, I'll have the steward inform everyone that if they're dissatisfied with the distribution, they can come to the rippling brothel to find me at any time. The other Xians will occasionally come to me to complain about the unfairness of their distribution, and I'll always make adjustments to the distribution. However, I've never seen the second miss come. Isn't it a little too far-fetched to bring this up now? In the past, Yun Ruoyan had always been timid and afraid of trouble. Even if she had to suffer grievances, she wouldn't speak up. Madame An had only dared to openly oppress her because she had grasped this personality of hers. All right, let's put this matter aside for now, Yun Ruoyan continued. Last year, on the first day of the new year, I was supposed to pay my respects to grandmother, but I ran into Hong Yu on the way. She told me that grandmother wasn't feeling well, and that I wouldn't be able to pay my respects. Instead, she told me to return to my cottage and wait for news. In the end, all the Xians of the family went to pay their respects to grandmother except for me. The Li kingdom placed great emphasis on filial piety, and Yun Lan had been furious that Yun Ruoyan didn't understand filial piety at all. Without giving Yun Ruoyan any chance to explain herself, he had punished her by sending her to the ancestral hall to kneel for 3 days. If Hong Yu hadn't received orders from Madame An, how would she have dared to lie to me? Yun Ruoyan demanded. Is that true? The Yun matriarch asked, her tone incredulous. She also remembered the day when all the Xians of the capital had gathered at her cottage to pay their respects, but Yun Ruoyan had been the only one missing. The Yun matriarch had always felt that, although Yun Ruoyan was a timid and eccentric girl, she still knew basic etiquette. However, that incident had left her dissatisfied. What do you say? The Yun matriarch looked at Madame An sternly. Madame Anne's expression changed as she suddenly called out, Hong Yu. Hong Yu, who was standing by Madame Anne's side, trembled as she bowed. Madame An, is what second miss said true? Did you lie to her? Madame An asked sternly. Hong Yu stammered for a long time, unable to come up with an explanation. What? Did I or didn't I? The Yun matriarch shouted. I didn't. Hong Yu bowed and replied. Yun Ruoyan glanced at Hong Yu and asked coldly, Hong Yu, if you didn't, why are you stammering? Hong Yu was Madame Anne's confidant, and she had done many shameful deeds under Madame Anne's command. As a result, her mental fortitude was far better than most servants. Other than at the beginning, when Madame Anne suddenly called out her name, she was able to conceal her nervousness quite well. Second miss, Hong Yu bowed. Because so much time has passed, I was afraid that I wouldn't remember clearly, so I tried to recall. That day, Hong Yu was ordered by Madame to help take stock of the gifts received during the spring festival in the small warehouse, preparing to put them into the big warehouse. She did not go anywhere else, nor did she see Second Mississippi. I'm sure you're mistaken, Second Mississippi. I did have Hong Yu help Mama Zhang take stock of the gifts that day, Madame An replied. As for whether Hong Yu went off to do other things, I don't know. If you don't believe me, you can call Mama Zhang over to confront her. Yun Ruoyan sneered inwardly. After turning a corner on the way to the small warehouse, Hong Yu had purposely waited for her there, hoping to deceive her before heading to the warehouse. Mama Zhang was one of the Yun matriarch's most trusted subordinates, and with her as a witness, no one would be able to find any evidence against her. Madame An had truly gone to great lengths to deal with this pitiful daughter of hers. The Yun matriarch was about to call Mama Zhang over when Yun Ruoyan stopped her. Grandmother, there's no need. Madame An has already made preparations, and even if you call someone over, they won't be able to find out anything. Yun Ruoyan no longer addressed Madame An as her mother but as her mistress. Similarly, Madame An no longer called Yun Ruoyan by her nickname, but rather by her second mistress. At this point, the relationship between the two of them had been completely ruined. Yun Ruoyan, you're going too far. Yun Ruoyao, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke up. You don't have any evidence and you're trying to slander mother with just your mouth alone? Yun Ruoyao glanced at Yun Ruoyu, who was silent with her head lowered. He was a little confused. Usually Yun Ruoyu would be the one to speak up, so why wasn't she speaking up today? Since things have gotten to this point, I'll have to settle the score with you today, sister. Yun Ruoyan turned to Yun Ruoyao. Even if you and Madame N conspired against me time and time again, just the fact that you led Yun Ruoyu and Yi Qianying away when the saber-toothed tiger attacked me in the imperial territory, and that you led us into the snake's den in an attempt to kill us is more than enough to be banished from the Yun family. You're slandering me. Yun Ruoyao hadn't expected Yun Ruoyan to bring up the past. Don't even think about making up so many crimes against mother and I. As long as you don't have any evidence, all of this is just empty talk. Today, in front of grandmother and father, I'd like to ask you why you're trying to slander us. Second miss, if you're dissatisfied with me as the matriarch of the household, you can target me alone. There's no need to drag your sister into this. Madame Anne's tone was filled with disappointment and sadness. Ron, I've really misjudged you. To think that you, good second Inyong, good second younger sister. Yun Ma Xiao's heart was burning with anger as he listened to Yun Ruoyan's words. He clenched his fists tightly to suppress his anger and interrupted Madame N. I remember that mother treated you well when you were young, but this is how you repay her. Yun Ma Xiao had always known that Yun Ruoyan was introverted and self-abased because of the birthmark on her face. Even though she was the sole wife-born daughter of Yun Ruoyan, she didn't dare to raise her head in public. However, he had never imagined that Yun Ruoyan would be bullied to such an extent at home. Yun Ma Xiao turned to the silent Yun Lan and asked in a low voice, Father, you forbade me from writing to my sister saying that it would affect her cultivation, and that you'd take good care of her. Is this what you get for taking care of her? Yun Lan sat quietly in his seat as still as a statue. Only when he heard Yun Ma Xiao's question did his eyes flicker. These are all Ruoyan's words. There's a misunderstanding between her and her mother, so her words can't be trusted. Yun Ma Xiao hadn't expected his father to say such a thing. Father, you don't believe Ruoyan, but I do. He looked at Yun Lan disappointedly. Since you can't protect my sister, then I'll protect her myself. Yun Ma Xiao took Yun Ruoyan's hand. I'm going to take Ruoyan to the army. Chapter 116. Yun Ma Xiao was a straightforward man and he was a man of his word. As a result, both Yun Lan and the Yun matriarch paled at his words. What nonsense are you spouting? Yun Lan stood up from his seat. The army isn't a place for you to mess around. Yun Lan had kept his daughter from contacting Yun Ma Xiao precisely because he was worried that his brother would do something ridiculous to protect his sister. 4 years ago, Yun Ma Xiao had beaten Yun Moyuan to the point that he couldn't get out of bed for half a month. If Yun Moyuan were to find out what had happened to Yun Ruoyan all these years, he would surely cause a huge ruckus. I'm not messing around. I promised mother that I'd take good care of Ruoyan after she left, but I've failed to do so all these years. Yun Ma Xiao stared straight at his father, not backing down in the slightest. His eyes were filled with both self-blame and reproach. When Lin Yueme had passed away, he had already regained his memories. He could clearly remember how she had held on to his father's hand and told him to take good care of him and his sister. But 2 years after Lin Yueme's death, he had been sent to the army, and Yun Ruoyan had been bullied in his absence. How could Yun Ma Xiao not be disappointed in his father? That's why I want to make up for what I've done to Ruoyan all these years, Yun Ma Xiao continued. Father, don't you feel guilty? Shouldn't you feel guilty and apologetic toward our mother in heaven? Yun Ma Xiao directly rebuked his father. How dare you? Yun Lan slammed his palm on the table and pointed a finger at his father, but he was so angry that he couldn't speak. The Li kingdom valued filial piety, and Yun Ma Xiao's rebuke of his father was not only a violation of filial piety, but also a challenge to his father's authority as the head of the family. Young Master Yun, you're so impressive. Seeing that Yun Lan was enraged, Madame N said, Is this the etiquette you learned in the army to criticize your elders in public? If I have the chance, I'll have to ask General Huang about it. The General Huang that Madame An spoke of was Yun Maxiao's immediate superior in the army, as well as his cultivation master. He was someone that Yun Maxiao deeply respected. Master, you taught me to distinguish right from wrong. You taught me to keep my promises. You taught me to protect my country. Yun Maxiao suddenly turned to look at Madame An. I'd like to ask Madame An this. As the matriarch of the An family, you're bullying a weak orphan girl, colluding with outsiders and framing your own family. Is this the proper etiquette of the An family? Yun Maxiao's words were very harsh. Not only was he criticizing Madame An, but he was also criticizing the entire An clan. Madame An was at a loss for words. Yun Maxiao. Yun Ruiyao saw that her mother was so angry that her face had turned white. How dare you speak so rudely to me and to the An family? Don't forget that you're the eldest son of the Yun family. I don't need you to tell me who I am, but don't forget who you are. Yun Maxiao snorted, not even bothering to look at Yun Ruiyao. How dare a mere concubine's daughter address me by name? Is this the etiquette your mother taught you? Yun Maxiao glanced at Yun Lan, his eyes filled with obvious disappointment and disdain. Or has father already given you permission to replace Ruoyan in the future? What nonsense are you spouting? Yun Ruiyao hurriedly retorted. Are you suspecting father? Yun Lan had never experienced such an accusation before. His face, which had been as cold as ice for 1,000 years, finally changed. He suddenly stood up and shouted towards the outside of the hall. Old Wu, Old Wu. Old Wu hurriedly ran in, but before he had a chance to ask, Yun Lan said, Go get the disciplinarian. Today I'm going to discipline my good son. Father, please calm down. Yun Ruoyan, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke up. Brother, you must be exhausted from your long days of travel. As soon as you arrived home, you learned that I'd been kidnapped. He said some offensive words in a moment of desperation. Please forgive him, father. Ruoyan. Yun Maxiao interrupted Yun Ruoyan. You don't have to beg him. I didn't do anything wrong. He didn't take good care of you, he was the one at fault. As soon as Yun Maxiao said this, Yun Ruoyan anxiously tugged on his sleeve to stop him. Yun Lan's anger was unquenchable. He yelled at the bowing Old Wu, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go. Old Wu raised his head and saw that Yun Lan's face had turned from white to red. Only then did he nod and really turn around to get the disciplinarian. Enough. The Yun matriarch shouted. The Yun family's disciplinarian hasn't been used in decades, so how can it be used so easily? Old Wu, stand down. Old Wu looked up at the Yun matriarch one more time before leaving. Since when did our Yun family become like this? Accusing and accusing each other? The Yun matriarch slammed her walking stick against the floor. Everyone here will be punished with 200 copies of the disciplinarian's disciplinarian. Xiaolon, I'm tired. Help me back. The Yun matriarch called out to Xiaolon by her side. Xiaolon helped the Yun matriarch away. As they passed by Yun Ruoyan, the Yun matriarch stopped. Come with me to Yun Ruoyan's cottage. I have something to ask you. Yun Maxiao accompanied Yun Ruoyan into Yun Ruoyan's cottage. Yun Maxiao wanted to enter the cottage together, but Xiaolon stopped him outside. Xiaolon, don't stop me. Yun Maxiao urged. Young master, the old madam won't make things difficult for the second miss. Inside the cottage, the Yun matriarch lay on a soft couch, her yellow eyes staring at Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan's actions today had exceeded the Yun matriarch's expectations. In the past, Yun Ruoyan definitely wouldn't have made things difficult for Yun Maxiao when he returned home. Given Yun Ruoyan's personality, the Yun matriarch had only guessed that she would get angry, but she hadn't expected Yun Ruoyan to bring up the past. Yun Ruoyan knew Yun Maxiao's personality well enough to know that she was clearly trying to provoke him and worsen his relationship with his father. Based on the Yun matriarch's understanding of Yun Ruoyan, she wasn't such an insensible person. So what was Yun Ruoyan's intentions? The Yun matriarch didn't speak, and so did Yun Ruoyan. Ruoyan. After a while, the Yun matriarch finally spoke up. I know that you've suffered all these years and your father and I want to make it up to you. However, your actions today have caused conflict between your father and brother. That's not something you want to see, is it? Yun Ruoyan's actions today seemed unwise, but she had her own selfish motives. However, she couldn't tell the Yun matriarch about them, because no one other than Yun Ruoyan would understand her actions. As a result, she thought of another reason. Ruian doesn't want to see conflict between my father and brother, but this time the second madam truly wanted to kill me. If I continue to be lenient, there'll surely be a second time and then a third time. This time the slaughtering king saved me, but next time I won't be so lucky. The Yun matriarch sighed. She was well aware of Madame Anne's dissatisfaction with the fact that she had relinquished her position as madam to that of a concubine. This was one of the reasons why the Yun matriarch had tolerated Madame Anne's actions so many times in the past. The Yun matriarch had once thought that, if Yun Ruian really wasn't up to the task, she would pass the position of wife-born daughter to Yun Ruiyao in order to appease Madame Anne's dissatisfaction. But now that Yun Ruian was fully capable of being the wife-born daughter of the Yun family, Madame Anne would be far too insensible if she still didn't know when to back down. Ruian, don't worry. I can guarantee that she won't do anything to harm you again, and this incident won't happen a second time. If you insist on pursuing this matter, it'll develop into a conflict between the Yun and An families. I'm sure you know that your father was the first to marry into the An family, but your mother, Lin Yueme, ended up taking the position of madam. The An family is already quite dissatisfied with this. The Yun matriarch sighed. Because of this incident, neither your father nor I want to see a conflict arise between the two families. The Yun matriarch then told Yun Ruian a few more things about the Yun family and the prosperity of her career, and Yun Ruian cooperated. I understand what you mean, grandmother. I won't pursue this matter any further, and I'll advise brother not to pursue it. But if there's a next time, I hope that grandmother and father will be able to give me justice. Yun Ruian was determined that even if Madame Anne didn't cause any more trouble, she would still have to do something about it. Otherwise, she didn't know when she would be able to get justice. After speaking with Yun Ruian, the Yun matriarch called her brother into her room. Under their persuasion, Yun Moxiao finally suppressed his anger and agreed not to pursue the matter for the time being. Once they were out of Yun Ruian's cottage, he turned to Yun Ruian. Ruian, if you don't want to stay in the capital any longer, why don't you come with brother to the barracks on the outskirts? It's a vast place and there aren't so many people and things to worry about. The barracks are filled with men. Why would I go? Yun Ruian smiled. Yun Moxiao immediately perked up. Master said that women aren't inferior to men in terms of cultivation, so why can't they join the army? The master that Yun Moxiao was referring to was the General Huang that Madame Anne had mentioned earlier. That's why the army is preparing to expand its female barracks. If you're willing, I'll make sure to make you a female general. Yun Ruian wanted to laugh, but when she saw Yun Moxiao's expectant face, she replied seriously, Brother, I've already obtained the qualifications to enter Kongming Academy, so I really can't follow you to the barracks. What? This was the first time Yun Moxiao had heard of this news, and he couldn't help but exclaim, You've obtained the qualifications to enter Kongming Academy? Although Yun Lan had kept the fact that Yun Ruian had been expelled from the family academy from Kongming Academy from Yun Moxiao knew that Yun Ruian's cultivation had deteriorated, and he had hoped that she would marry into a good family and spend the rest of her life in peace and prosperity. What surprised Yun Moxiao was that Yun Ruian had actually passed the imperial territory and obtained the qualifications to enter Kongming Academy, a place that even he had yearned for. Ruian, mother will be very happy to hear about this. Yun Moxiao looked at Yun Ruian gratified. Yun Ruian's eyes slowly turned cloudy with sorrow. It was time to tell Yun Moxiao about Lin Yueme's poisoning. Chapter 117. Brother, Yun Ruian murmured. Let's go to grandfather's manor right now. Grandfather and I have something to tell you. The Lins and the Yuns hadn't interacted with each other for many years. For the Yun matriarch's birthday celebration, they had only sent an invitation to the Lins as a show of courtesy, and the Lins had only sent a gift before hurriedly leaving. Lin Zainan had been in seclusion for the past few days, and Lin Xianxia had spent most of her time in her bamboo garden other than tending to her apothecary. Lin Xianxia had also locked herself up in her peach garden to do the homework that Lin Zainan had given her. As a result, although the news of Yun Ruian's abduction had spread like wildfire, none of the Lins had heard of it. It wasn't until this morning that Lin Bo heard the news while he was on his way to the market. He hurriedly went to look for Lin Xianxia, who then went to look for Lin Xianxia. Then the two sisters went to the pill-making chambers together. Seeing that the doors and windows were tightly shut, and that Lin Zainan was still in seclusion, neither of them dared to disturb him. Just as the two of them were panicking, Lin Bo led Yun Ruoyan to the back of the courtyard. "Mrs. Look who's here." Lin Bo called out to Lin Qingchen and Lin Qingxue from afar. Lin Qingchen and Lin Qingxue turned around to see Yun Ruoyan, as well as a tall youth behind her. "Sister Ruoyan, are you all right?" Without another word, Lin Qingxue rushed toward Yun Ruoyan and grabbed her hand. "I heard from Uncle Lin that you'd been kidnapped by a sorcerer. My sister and I were so worried. We wanted to look for grandfather, but before he could come out of seclusion, you're here. Thank goodness." "I'm fine now, sorry for making you worry." Yun Ruoyan saw that the worry on Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen's faces had turned into joy upon seeing her, and Lin Qingxue was on the verge of tears. It seemed that her two sisters had truly been worried about her. Yun Ruoyan felt both warm and apologetic. "Is this my cousin?" Lin Qingchen looked at Yun Moxiao, who was standing beside Yun Ruoyan. "Little sister, you still remember me?" Yun Moxiao smiled, and the youth's determined face immediately became sunny and gentle. "Of course I remember." Lin Qingxue's gaze also shifted from Yun Ruoyan to Yun Moxiao. She exclaimed exaggeratedly, "Wow, Cousin Xiao has grown taller and more handsome." Yun Moxiao couldn't help but chuckle at his enthusiastic cousin's praise. Lin Qingxue circled around Yun Moxiao and asked, "Cousin Xiao actually came empty-handed. I still can't forget the salty taste of the dried horse meat you brought last time. I've been waiting for you to bring it to me all these years. Don't tell me you didn't bring it." Yun Moxiao exclaimed. "I came back in such a hurry that I forgot. I don't care. I want a gift. I've waited so long for you to come back." Lin Qingxue's smiling face immediately turned bitter. "If there's no horse meat, then anything else is fine. In any case, I have to give you a gift." Lin Qingxue tugged at Yun Moxiao's sleeves and started acting coquettishly. "Cousin, don't worry about her," Lin Qingchen said to Yun Moxiao. "She's always messing around." Lin Qingxue was an easygoing person, and the more she liked someone, the more unruly she would be. Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingchen were already used to her behavior. Although Yun Moxiao hadn't seen the Lin sisters in many years, he wasn't angered by Lin Qingxue's antics. Instead, he thought that she was quite cute. "All right." Yun Moxiao agreed readily. "If we have time, let's go out on the streets. Take whatever you like, just treat it as a gift from me." "Really?" Lin Qingxue's round face bloomed like a sunflower, and her even rounder eyes shone with a joyful light. "Great, this is great," Lin Qingxue exclaimed. "In a few days, it'll be the temple fair to usher in autumn, and the streets will be the busiest we've seen in months." Lin Qingchen smiled and sighed. "Cousin, just ignore this girl's words. You must be tired and you should rest well for a few days." Yun Moxiao smiled and said that he wasn't tired, and when Yun Ruoyan saw that her brother and sisters were all smiles, much of the anger that had built up in the Yun manor dissipated. Creak. Just then, the door to the apothecary opened and a white-haired, white-bearded Lin Zainan walked out. "Grandfather." Yun Moxiao's voice was choked with emotion. On the way here, Yun Ruoyan had told Yun Moxiao about how Lin Zainan had used his cultivation to refine the antidote for her. Even though Yun Moxiao couldn't recall Lin Zainan's appearance, he felt a strong sense of kinship when he saw Lin Zainan's white hair and beard. Lin Zainan had been busy in the apothecary when he heard a boy's voice in the courtyard. His intuition told him that Yun Moxiao had returned, and he hurriedly opened the door. Although he had heard the Lin sisters and Yun Ruoyan's descriptions of Yun Moxiao, Lin Zainan's eyes still lit up when he saw Yun Moxiao in person. He was tall and muscular, dressed in a dark red armor, and his ink-black hair was tied up neatly with a metal crown of the same color. Although his facial features were quite similar to Yun Ruoyan's, his chiseled facial features accentuated his masculine aura, making him handsome and masculine. "Xiao," Lin Zainan called out loudly. Yun Moxiao quickly walked forward and knelt down in front of Lin Zainan. "Grandfather, I kowtow to you on behalf of my mother." "Good child, get up." Lin Zainan hurriedly reached out to help Yun Moxiao up, but Yun Moxiao insisted on kowtowing 3 times before letting Lin Zainan help him up. "Good child, truly a good child." Lin Zainan didn't know what to say when he saw Yun Moxiao's agitation. Lin Zainan had lost a daughter and 2 sons, and he only had two granddaughters, Lin Xianxia and Lin Qingchen. Although Yun Ruoyan and Yun Moxiao didn't share the same surname, they had the blood of the Lin family in their veins. In Lin Zainan's heart, they were just as important as the Lin sisters. Old Lin, old Lin. Lin Zainan called out as he laughed. Lin Bo ran in from outside. Have the kitchen prepare some meat, Lin Zainan instructed. Lin Zainan said to Uncle Lin, go to the cellar and bring me that bottle of 50-year-old wine. I want to have a good drink with my grandson tonight. Lin Zainan hadn't eaten meat for many years and he'd even been drinking less in recent years. When Lin Bo heard that he wanted meat, he was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted and rushed off to prepare. There's meat to eat. Lin Qingxue shouted excitedly. Neither Lin Zainan nor Lin Qingchen liked meat, so Lin Qingxue had to go out every day to get more. Today she could finally eat meat in her own home. The three of them went to Lin Zainan's study to talk. Lin Zainan had carried Yun Muyan when he was still a baby, and in the blink of an eye, Yun Moxiao had grown a head taller than him. The two of them sat together chatting endlessly. Lin Qingchen, Lin Qingxue, and Yun Ruoyan sat by the side listening to their conversation. Lin Zainan asked Yun Muyan a lot about the army, and Lin Qingxue was most interested in this topic. Yun Moxiao didn't bother her at all, patiently answering her every question. When Lin Qingxue heard that the army was recruiting female soldiers, she excitedly expressed her desire to participate, but she couldn't because she'd already obtained the qualifications to enter Kongming Academy. Lin Qingxue's expression became conflicted, and she even considered giving up the qualifications to enter Kongming Academy to follow Yun Moxiao into the army. However, as soon as this thought appeared in her mind, Lin Qingchen and Lin Zainan stopped her sternly. Lin Qingxue sighed, causing everyone to laugh. As dusk approached, the Lin household was filled with laughter and cheers. In contrast, within the Yun household, the red lanterns used to celebrate the Yun matriarch's birthday were still swaying, but the atmosphere within the manor was cold. After the Yun matriarch left with Yun Ruoyan and Yun Moxiao, Yun Lan said, all of you go back to your own rooms and reflect on your actions. Think about whether you still have the right to remain in the Yun household. With a flick of his sleeves he left. What did he mean by that? Was he going to kick her out of the Yun household? Madame Anne's heart turned cold. Ever since she'd entered the family, no matter how much she tried to curry favor with him, Yun Lan had never paid any attention to her. Although Madame Anne had been dissatisfied with the arranged marriage when she was younger, the first time she saw Yun Lan, his handsome face and cold, independent aura had captured her heart. As a result, when Madame Anne learned that Yun Lan had fallen in love with another woman and was about to marry her, she resolutely decided to marry him. Madame Anne and Lin Yueme entered the Yun household together. According to custom, the groom would spend the first night in the wife's room, and the second night in the concubine's room. However, Madame Anne had to wait for half a month before Yun Lan finally showed up. That day Yun Lan had gotten drunk, and when he was with her he had called out Lin Yueme's name. Every word was like a poisonous needle stabbing into Madame Anne's heart. In the past, Madame Anne had only wanted to share some of Yun Lan's love, but she had discovered that Yun Lan only had eyes for Lin Yueme. She couldn't accept this. She hated him. In the end, Madame Anne had slowly turned from an innocent young miss into a resentful housewife. After Lin Yueme's death, Madame Anne had thought that her chance had come, but Yun Lan had taken in 3 more concubines. Each of these concubines bore a striking resemblance to Lin Yueme. Madame Anne's resentment only deepened. Why couldn't she win over Lin Yueme when she was alive? And why couldn't she win over Lin Yueme when she was dead? Lin Yueme, you've won Master Yun's heart, so I can't win over you. But I refuse to believe that I can't even win over your daughter. The more Madame Anne thought about it, the angrier she became. She couldn't help but start coughing. Mother, are you all right? Yun Ruyao patted her back as she asked. I'm fine. Let's go back to Madame Anne's quarters. Madame Anne stopped coughing. Although her tone was normal, when Yun Ruyao reached out to support her, she noticed that her entire body was trembling slightly. Sister, mother, Yun Ruyu called out. Madame Qin has asked me to accompany her tonight, so I won't be going back to Madame Anne's quarters. Yun Ruyao frowned at Yun Ruyu. She had wanted to scold her, but Madame Anne waved a hand to stop her. Why haven't I seen Qianying these past few days? Madame Anne turned to Yun Ruyao. She's still preparing her wedding dress, Yun Ruyao replied. Sister Qianying's heart is still tied to young Master Pei, and she's been quite haggard these past few days. Madame N straightened her back, her lips curling into a cold smile. Let's go visit her another day. Chapter 118. After dinner, Lin Zainan called Yun Ruian and Yun Moxiao into his pill-making chambers. He took out a porcelain bottle and poured its contents onto a porcelain plate. The dark red liquid dripped onto the white plate, emitting a strange, fishy odor. "Grandfather, what's this?" Yun Ruian asked. Lin Zainan didn't immediately answer Yun Ruian's question. Instead, he took out a silver needle and dipped it into the liquid, instantly turning it black. "What poison is this? It's so strong," Yun Moxiao exclaimed. Lin Zainan carefully pinched the needle between his fingers and all three of them looked at it. More than half of the thin needle had already turned black. "This is the poisoned blood that was forced out of Ruian's body," Lin Zainan explained slowly. Yun Moxiao and Yun Ruian both froze. When they looked at the poisoned blood on the table again, they felt their blood boil. Yun Moxiao slammed his palm on the table. "Who in the world would use such a vicious poison to harm Ruian?" "Brother." Yun Ruian turned to her brother, her expression solemn and sorrowful. "There's something I want to tell you personally. You have to remain calm." Yun Moxiao frowned. Before coming to the Lin Manor, Yun Ruian had told him that she had something to tell him. On the way there, Yun Ruian had told him that she had been poisoned. Yun Moxiao thought that Yun Ruian was going to tell him that she had been poisoned, but from her expression, it seemed as if Lin Zainan was going to tell him something even more serious. "Grandfather, tell me." Although Yun Moxiao was impulsive, he had grown up in the army, and he was able to remain calm when he needed to. Lin Zainan began. "Your mother was poisoned to death." Although he had mentally prepared himself, and although he had told himself to remain calm no matter what he heard, Yun Moxiao still stood up abruptly, his hands clenched into fists. "Grandfather, you're saying that mother was killed by someone?" he asked. Your mother, my daughter, was poisoned to death," Lin Zainan repeated. Lin Zainan repeated, "The poison in her body is the poison in this porcelain plate, which is also the poison in your sister's body." Yun Moxiao turned his gaze to Yun Ruian, who nodded and explained, "When that man poisoned mother, she was already pregnant with me, so the poison passed from her to me. I was infected with a fetal poison. Not only is this poison vicious, it's also strange." Lin Zainan continued, "The incubation period is very long. There are almost no signs in the early stages of poisoning, but once the poison breaks out, there is almost no cure. It's fortunate that Ruian was lucky enough to obtain an antidote in the imperial territory. Otherwise, if the poison in her body had erupted, the consequences would have been unimaginable." Lin Zainan couldn't help but sigh. Yun Moxiao tried his best to suppress the blood in his chest. He clenched his fists and slammed them against the wall, causing the whole room to tremble. "I will definitely find the person who poisoned me and tear him to pieces." Yun Moxiao's voice was filled with suppressed anger, hatred, and an intense killing intent. Yun Ruian and Lin Zainan could feel the spiritual energy emanating from Yun Moxiao's body. To their surprise, Yun Moxiao was already an 8th-rank blade master. Lin Zainan looked at his granddaughter and grandson in front of him. One was 13 and the other was 18. One was a peak 7th-rank blade master, and the other was an 8th-rank blade master. Throughout the entire Li Kingdom, it would be difficult for these two siblings to find a worthy opponent among their peers. While Lin Zainan was pleased, he decided to tell the two of them about the clues he had just uncovered. "I've been researching the origins of this poison." Lin Zainan turned around and took out a book from the wooden shelf behind him. Lin Zainan opened the book on the table, and Yun Ruian and Yun Moxiao's eyes followed his movements to the book. The book was simple and heavy, its pages made of silk cloth. From its slightly darkened color, it was easy to tell how old it was. On the cover of the book were 5 golden words: records of the Qinyuan races. The Qinyuan continent wasn't originally made up of 4 empires, but of many different races. The Records of the Abyssal Races was a book that recorded the history of those ancient races. As Lin Zainan flipped through the pages, he began, "By analyzing the properties of the poison and its scent, I determined that it wasn't native to the Li Kingdom. After reading through a large number of ancient books, I finally found the origin of this poison in this book." As Lin Zainan's voice trailed off, he stopped flipping through the pages and pointed at one of the pages. This is it. Yun Ruoyan and Yun Moxiao couldn't help but lean closer. The book was filled with all sorts of venomous insects and plants that Yun Ruoyan had never seen before, as well as some strangely dressed people. The text was a record of an ancient tribe. The text recorded that this tribe lived in the deep mountains and forests of the Yu Kingdom. The forests were filled with venomous insects and plants, and they used these insects and plants to create all sorts of poisons. In particular, there was a description of a mother-child poison that was very similar to the poison that Yun Ruoyan had been afflicted with. This poison has a latent nature, and how long it will remain dormant depends on the physical condition of the mother and child. If the mother is strong, the child will die first, and if the child is strong, the mother will die first. Lin Zainan read out the passage. If the mother was strong, the child would die first, and if the child was strong, the mother would die first. How much did the person who had poisoned Yun Ruoyan and Yun Ruoyan hate them? Whoever did this must have hated mother to the core, Yun Ruoyan murmured. Yun Ruoyan turned to Lin Zainan. Grandfather, I've always suspected that it was Madame N who poisoned mother. Yun Moxiao looked up at Yun Ruoyan. You're saying that Madame N poisoned mother? Yun Ruoyan shook her head. It's only a suspicion, but I don't have any proof. Although Madame N had the motive to harm Yume, it's unlikely that she was the culprit. Lin Zainan shook his head. Yume was poisoned while pregnant with Ruoyan, and Madame N was pregnant at the time. Moreover, Yun Lan was quite protective of Yume at the time, and Madame N was only a concubine. Given her abilities, it's almost impossible for her to poison Yume right under Yun Lan's nose. Yun Ruoyan also felt that if Madame N had poisoned Yume, Yun Lan's shrewdness wouldn't have allowed him to detect it all these years. If it wasn't Madame N, then who could it be? Yun Moxiao muttered to himself. For a moment all three of them fell silent. Lin Yume hadn't made enemies with anyone, so if it wasn't Madame N, who else could it be? I think that if we want to find the culprit, we'll have to start with the poison, Yun Ruoyan said after a short silence. After a short silence, Yun Ruoyan said, this poison was produced by the shamans of the Yu Kingdom, so we should start our investigation with them. Lin Zainan sighed. I asked a friend in the Yu Kingdom to investigate this tribe, but the only news I received was that they disappeared many years ago. Disappeared? Yun Ruoyan and Yun Moxiao exclaimed in unison. In fact, this was where Lin Zainan's investigation had ended. The three of them fell silent once more. Yun Ruoyan flipped through the records of the Qinyuan tribes, and she suddenly came across a paragraph that described the ancient shamanic tribe. Due to differences in their beliefs, there had been several splits, and a portion of the tribe had left the tribe. Grandfather, it's very likely that these splits of shamanic tribe also possess a secret recipe for poison, Yun Ruoyan guessed. Yun Ruoyan guessed, could the poison that my mother was poisoned have come from the descendants of the shaman tribe? Very likely. Lin Zainan thought for a moment, then pointed at the paragraph and read, some of the shamanic tribe believed in the Buddha of the 9 heavens and begged for immortality. Others believed in the Buddha of reincarnation and begged for an afterlife. These two beliefs couldn't be reconciled, and in the end the shamanic tribe split. Yun Ruoyan flipped to another page and continued. Those who believed in the Buddha of reincarnation moved out of their ancestral home and scattered across the Qinyuan continent, living a nomadic life. According to the book, it's very likely that this shamanic tribe existed in the Li Kingdom? Yun Moxiao asked. It's not just possible, Yun Ruoyan replied. Yun Ruoyan continued, of course they are. Mother's poison must have come from one of them, so finding them now is the key to finding the culprit. But the Li Kingdom is so vast, and finding them would be like finding a needle in a haystack. Yun Ruoyan sighed. Yun Moxiao's gaze was resolute as he said, even if I have to drain the ocean dry, I will find them. Look here. Lin Zainan pointed at a painting. The two of them looked at the painting. It was a portrait of Guanyin and a Buddha sitting back to back, and the accompanying text below described it as a portrait of the Buddha of reincarnation. Grandfather, why are there two people in this portrait? Yun Ruoyan asked. Lin Zainan continued reading the text. The Buddha of reincarnation is actually two people. Guanyin is worshipped in this life and the Buddha is worshipped in the next. Worshippers worship Guanyin in this life during the day and the Buddha at night. Only by burning incense day and night can one reach perfection. Grandfather. Yun Ruoyan hurriedly asked, you're saying that these shamanic descendants need to worship their god day and night, but how do they survive? Lin Zainan didn't answer Yun Ruoyan's question. Instead he asked, Ruoyan, have you thought of something? Ruoyan, if you've thought of something, just say it. Don't keep us guessing. Yun Ruoyan said, I'm guessing that these descendants of the sorcerer tribe are hiding in the temples. Only in the temples can their reincarnation Buddhas be worshipped the most. Both Lin Zainan and Yun Maxiao's eyes lit up. In order to ensure that their god would receive more worship, not only could they hide in a temple, but they could even build a temple for themselves. Chapter 119. That's why we can start with the temple, Yun Ruoyan said what the three of them were thinking. Finally, having figured out a direction for their investigation, the three of them relaxed a little. I'll start investigating the temple in the city tomorrow, Yun Maxiao said. Let's go together, Yun Ruoyan added. Kongming Academy will be starting classes soon, and Ruoyan needs to focus on her cultivation. You only have 10 days of vacation, so rest well during this time, Lin Zainan said. I'll leave the investigation to Uncle Lin. Uncle Lin had traveled extensively with Lin Zainan when he was young, and the three of them were confident in his abilities. Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao both agreed to Lin Zainan's arrangements. Ruoyan, give me your hand, Lin Zainan called out to Yun Ruoyan. From the first moment he saw Yun Ruoyan, he could tell that her complexion wasn't the same as usual, and her breathing seemed a little labored. However, she seemed to be in good spirits, and it didn't seem like anything serious had happened to her. Lin Zainan knew that Yun Ruoyan must have encountered something, and he was waiting for her to tell him herself. However, she didn't seem to have any intention of telling him, and he had no choice but to ask. Yun Ruoyan obediently handed her hand to Lin Zainan, who took her pulse. As expected, her blood flow wasn't smooth, and the spiritual energy within her body seemed to be almost non-existent. Ruoyan, who poisoned you this time? Lin Zainan frowned. Yun Maxiao hadn't noticed anything wrong with Yun Ruoyan, not because he was careless, but because the Yun Ruoyan in his memories had been in a worse state than she was now. Now that he heard Lin Zainan's words, he asked anxiously, was it that demon or was it Madame En? Yun Ruoyan shook her head, then told the two of them about Rong Yuehong's condition. The poison you've been afflicted with is known as the blood-devouring parasite. It enters your body through your bloodstream and it's incredibly painful. In less than a joss stick's worth of time, you'll die from the pain. Lin Zainan took Yun Ruoyan's pulse as he commented, this Miss Rong really knows how vicious the Rong family is. Yun Ruoyan snorted. She poisoned me in an attempt to kill me, but I angered her to death first, so we're even. It's just that Imperial Uncle Rong is not a good person. I don't know what other methods he will use to deal with me. Yun Ruoyan looked at her brother and saw that his face was dark and worried. She comforted him, brother, you don't have to worry too much about me. I've lived through all these years, and now that I've grown up, it won't be as easy to harm me as it used to be. Yun Maxiao pursed his lips, not knowing what to say, but in the end he didn't say anything. Lin Zainan continued, fortunately you ate an antidote in time. Although there's still some poison in your body, it'll slowly be expelled from your body, so there won't be any major problems. The only reason Yun Ruoyan hadn't told Lin Zainan about her poisoning was because she discovered that her spiritual and mental energy were slowly recovering, and she didn't want anyone to worry. Hearing Lin Zainan's words, the worry on Yun Maxiao's face lessened, and his gaze toward Yun Ruoyan became even more pitiful. In the 2 short days since he'd returned, his sister had suffered so much. He didn't dare to imagine what she'd experienced in the years he'd been gone. Yun Maxiao gently placed his hand on Yun Ruoyan's slender shoulder, his gaze landing on the veil covering the right side of her face. There was a swollen line of blood hidden under the veil. Sensing Yun Maxiao's gaze, Yun Ruoyan turned around and smiled at him. That smile was so light, so gentle, and so strong, as if none of the things that had happened to her had truly hurt her. Yun Maxiao, on the other hand, felt an inexplicable pain in his heart. As the sky gradually darkened, Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao returned to the Yun Manor at nightfall. When Yun Maxiao sent Yun Ruoyan back to her cottage, Peony, Xilan, and Ling Lan all cried tears of joy. Miss, you really scared us to death. Xilan wiped away her tears as she spoke, while Peony looked Yun Ruoyan up and down. Seeing that she wasn't injured, she finally relaxed. Ling Lan stood by the side. Although she didn't come over, her eyes were also red. Yun Ruoyan waved at Ling Lan and Ling Lan hurried over. Did Madame En make things difficult for you that day when you, Peony and Xilan were shouting down there together? That day Yun Ruoyan had been held in midair by the Taoist priest. Although her head had been splitting, she hadn't fainted. Now that she thought about it, she could recall many of the scenes and sounds. That day, the 3 servants had been shouting that Miss had been framed by Madame En, and Ling Lan's voice had been the loudest. As a result, Yun Ruoyan was worried that Madame En would suspect her and make things difficult for her. "No, I didn't." Ling Lan hurriedly waved her hands. She was very touched by Yun Ruoyan's concern. "Miss, don't worry about me. Madame En hasn't been having a good time these past 2 days, and she hasn't been paying much attention to me. However, if she asks, I'll tell her that I'm just putting on an act." Although Ling Lan gave off the impression that she was timid, she was actually quite quick-witted. She was grateful to Yun Ruoyan and she did her best. At first, Yun Ruoyan had only wanted to make use of her, but now she was starting to like her. "I'm a little relieved that Ruoyan has you 3 good servants to take care of her," Yun Moxiao suddenly spoke up. Only then did the 3 servants realize that a young master had entered the room with Yun Ruoyan, and they all turned to look at Yun Moxiao. "Young master, when did you return?" Peony asked happily before bowing. "Peony greets you, young master. Don't stand on ceremony." Yun Moxiao reached out to help Peony up. Peony was about the same age as Yun Moxiao, and they were more familiar with each other. Xilan was younger and she had been a laborer in the past, so she hadn't had many opportunities to meet Yun Moxiao. As a result, she didn't have a deep impression of him, and Ling Lan was a complete stranger to Yun Moxiao. "This is my eldest brother, the first young master of the Yun family." Xilan and Ling Lan came back to their senses and immediately bowed to Yun Moxiao. Yun Moxiao knew that these girls were very loyal to his sister, so he became closer to them and personally helped them up. Yun Moxiao was tall and handsome and his smile was as bright as the sun. The 2 servants only glanced at him once before lowering their heads, blushing. After exchanging a few words with Yun Ruoyan, Yun Moxiao left her cottage and headed back to his own quarters. His quarters were a little further from his own, but closer to Yun Lan's own quarters. On his way, he passed by the drifting gardens, where Yun Moxiao's 10 or so personal guards were stationed, and he was prepared to take a look. Yun Moxiao hadn't walked far when he discovered a suspicious figure hiding in the bushes by the side of the road. "Who's there? Come out!" Yun Moxiao shouted at the figure, who hurriedly scuttled deeper into the bushes. Yun Moxiao hurriedly chased after him, but he lost track of the figure as soon as he passed through the bushes. This was one of the more secluded areas of the Yun Manor, and the only residence nearby was Yun Ruoyan's quarters. Yun Moxiao didn't even need to think to know that the suspicious figure was heading straight for Yun Ruoyan. Yun Moxiao looked around and found that he was standing in an unfamiliar place. Although he had been born in the Yun Manor, he hadn't lived there for very long. When he had some recollection, he had spent most of his time at his master's, General Huang's, cultivating with him. When he was a little older, he had followed General Huang into the army, so he was unfamiliar with many parts of the Yun Manor. Yun Moxiao walked a few steps and saw that there were flowers and trees all around him as well as fake mountains. This was the location of a formation. Yun Moxiao had learned from General Huang not only how to cultivate, but also how to set up formations. Although the formation before him was rather mysterious, it wasn't a problem for him. This formation was meant to cause people to lose their way, not harm them. Those who didn't understand formations would simply circle around the manor. But because Yun Moxiao knew how to break through them, he was able to enter the heart of the formation. Yun Moxiao walked past 2 bushes, 3 fake mountains and finally saw a small lake. In the center of the lake was a small house. As Yun Moxiao walked toward the house, the memories in his mind became clearer and clearer. The lake, the marble bridge and the red sandalwood house. All of them became clearer and clearer in his mind. The moonstones embedded in the carved railings and jade-paved paths on the lake were all lit up at this moment. The faint light illuminated everything, making it seem so unreal. Yun Moxiao walked up the path until he reached the house. He looked up at the signboard above the house, upon which there were 3 elegant words. Fenghua Gardens. Yun Moxiao enunciated each word carefully. This was where Lin Yueme had once lived, and where Yun Ma Xiao had lived as a child. Although he hadn't lived there for long, it was an unforgettable memory for him. His beautiful mother loved to dance at night, bathed in the moonstone's faint light, in front of this beautiful house. It was as if her beautiful figure were right in front of him. "Mother!" Yun Ma Xiao called out, two streams of tears flowing from the eyes of a youth who had been tempered in the army since he was a child. "Xiao, a familiar voice called out from behind Yun Ma Xiao. Yun Ma Xiao turned around and saw Yun Lan standing not too far behind him. "Xiao, what are you doing here?" Yun Lan walked up to his son and asked. "Father." Yun Ma Xiao cupped his fists and bowed. Yun Lan nodded and gestured for him to rise. Although Yun Ma Xiao had said quite a few things to his father in a fit of anger, he wasn't someone who didn't know proper etiquette or respect filial piety. "I was sending my sister back to her cottage when I ran into a suspicious figure on the way back. I chased after him and accidentally stumbled into this house," Yun Ma Xiao replied. "Suspicious figure?" Yun Lan frowned. "Did you see what he looked like?" Yun Ma Xiao shook his head. "He was more familiar with the terrain than I was, so he managed to escape. This place is closest to my cottage, so I don't know if he'll do anything to harm Ruoyan. I hope father can investigate this matter thoroughly." Yun Lan nodded and walked up the stairs to the small building. He asked, "Do you still remember this place?" "Yes, mother loves to dance where you're standing right now," Yun Ma Xiao replied. "I'm afraid Ruoyan has no recollection of it at all." When Yun Lan heard his brother mention Yun Ruoyan, he sighed. "Your sister doesn't resemble your mother at all. In fact, you're at least 70% more like her." Yun Ruoyan had looked much prettier after wearing her veil, but the day she had been poisoned by Rong Yuehong and half of her face had been swollen and frightening. Those who didn't know the truth couldn't help but exaggerate her reputation as the ugly daughter of the Yun family. Naturally, Yun Lan didn't know the truth either. His impression of Yun Ruoyan was that not only was she ugly, but that her personality was also unruly. She bore no resemblance to his late beautiful wife. Chapter 120. Yun Ruoyan took off her veil and showed it to her brother. The birthmark on her right cheek had completely disappeared, as the poison in her body had been purged. Although her face was still red and swollen from the new scar, Yun Ma Xiao could still see Lin Yuemei's shadow on her face. He believed that once Yun Ruoyan's wound was completely healed, she would be a beauty no less beautiful than his mother. Yun Ma Xiao could hear Yun Lan's dissatisfaction with Yun Ruoyan, and he almost blurted out the truth. However, when he recalled what Yun Ruoyan had told him, he swallowed his words. Yun Ruoyan had told him that although many people didn't like her because of her ugly appearance, she would be able to focus on her cultivation if they didn't disturb her. Compared to using her beautiful appearance, she was more willing to use her cultivation and strength to prop up the title of the Yun family's first daughter. One day, when she was strong enough to control her own fate, she would reveal her true appearance. Yun Ruoyan's tone was nonchalant as she spoke, but the determination in her eyes was one that Yun Ma Xiao was familiar with. It was the kind of determination that could only be honed through countless trials and tribulations. When Yun Ma Xiao remained silent, Yun Lan began, "I know you dote on Yen but you have to remember that you're the sole heir of the Yun family. You should prioritize the interests of the entire family." Yun Ma Xiao remained silent. Yun Lan continued, "When General Huang chose you as his disciple, although Yuemei's heart ached for you, she still agreed to send you away. She had high hopes for you, and I hope that you won't disappoint your mother. I've always known of my mother's hopes for me, and I've never forgotten my promise to her. It's getting late and I'm going to rest." Before Yun Lan could respond, Yun Ma Xiao turned and left. As he stepped onto the lake shore, he turned back to look at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Yun Lan was still standing with his hands behind his back, where Lin Yuemei had once danced. 4 years ago, when Yun Ma Xiao had returned to the Yun Manor, the Fang residence had already been torn down. He had angrily sought out Yun Lan, only to be told that it was the Yun matriarch's idea. Unexpectedly, Yun Lan had moved the Fang residence to such a secluded location. But as he looked at Yun Lan's back, Yun Ma Xiao couldn't help but wonder if Yun Lan was reminiscing about Lin Yuemei or her beautiful face. If Lin Yuemei hadn't died at the height of her beauty, but had lived until she was old and beautiful, would his father still miss her so much? Yun Ma Xiao was unsure. After leaving Fragrant Magnificence Garden, Yun Ma Xiao went to Drifting Garden. Seeing that everyone was already resting, he did not disturb them and went straight to Billowing Garden. The Billowing Garden was second only to Yun Lan's Elon Garden in the residence of Yun, but it was deserted because it had been vacant for a long time. The new maids assigned to him in the Fu were all unfamiliar faces. Yun Ma Xiao waved his hand to dismiss them and went straight to his bedroom. Yun Ma Xiao tossed and turned on his bed, unable to fall asleep. As soon as he closed his eyes, he would hear Yun Ruian's accusations against Madame and Madame Anne's excuses and Yun Lan's cold voice. Xiao, take good care of your sister. This was the last thing Lin Yueme said to Yun Ma Xiao before he was forcibly taken away from Fragrant Magnificence Garden. The next time he saw Lin Yueme, she was a cold gravestone. I've worked hard in the army to protect my family and my country, but I can't even protect my only sister. If I can't fulfill mother's last wish, what kind of man am I? Yun Ma Xiao began to struggle internally. There are still tens of thousands of good men in the country, but I'm mother's only son and I'm Ruian's only brother. If I were to abandon Ruian and return to the army, how could I possibly be at ease? I'd be even more unfilial if I couldn't find the person who killed my mother myself. But Master has taught me for so many years and he even promoted me to the position of Vice General. How could I disappoint him? Sigh. Yun Ma Xiao's heart was in turmoil and he was sure to have a sleepless night. Within Yun Ruian's cottage, Peony and Xilan were preparing water for Yun Ruian's bath. Miss, when will young master be returning to the army? Peony asked. Xilan's hands paused and she immediately pricked up her ears for Yun Ruian's reply. As she combed her hair, Yun Ruian replied, the army only gave him 10 days of leave, and it'll take him 5 days to travel back and forth. 2 days have already passed. If he's going to return, he'll only have 3 days left. If he's going to return? The usually carefree Xilan seemed to catch the underlying meaning in Yun Ruian's words. Miss, are you saying that young master might not return to the army? Peony paused for a moment, then reacted. Miss, is it possible that young master won't return to the army this time? Yun Ruian stopped cutting her hair and looked at the 2 maidservants, who were waiting for her reply. You two are getting weirder and weirder. When did I ever say something like that? Yun Ruian smiled. Miss, you clearly did just now. Xilan hurriedly interjected. Miss, if you're saying that he'll return, then doesn't that mean that he might not return? Xilan, you've even learned to read Mrs. Words. Yun Ruian didn't intend to elaborate further. Stop guessing, Mississippi. I'm going to take a bath. After dismissing Peony and Xilan, Yun Ruian lay in the bathtub, applying the ointment that Liemo had given her. I wonder what brother will choose, Yun Ruian thought to herself. The bald eagle used the momentum to leap off, spread its wings and glided away. The bald eagle flew higher and higher, circled twice in the air, and let out a cry in response to Yun Ma Xiao's words. Then it galloped off into the distance. As Yun Ma Xiao watched the bald eagle fly further and further away, he felt as if a heavy weight had been lifted from his heart, and a wave of drowsiness washed over him. He stretched lazily, yawned loudly, and returned to his room to catch up on his sleep. Mistress, mistress. Just as Yun Ruian was about to wake up, Qiuqiu's voice suddenly rang out in her mind. Chirp, chirp. Yun Ruian immediately responded in her mind. Oh, you finally heard my voice? Qiuqiu let out a long breath. I've been worried sick these past 2 days. My mental energy was damaged and I can't communicate with you, Yun Ruian explained. But it looks like I've mostly recovered. Thankfully it was a close shave. Although Qiuqiu couldn't communicate with Yun Ruian, it could sense that Yun Ruian wasn't in any danger. That's right. Yun Ruian couldn't help but sigh. I never would have thought that Rong Yuehong would hide poison in her fingernails to harm me. Thankfully I'm lucky. Although she had encountered many difficulties since her rebirth, her life had generally been relatively smooth. If she had died at the hands of Rong Yuehong, she would have died in despair. Once my spiritual energy and mental energy have fully recovered, I'll first have to learn how to refine antidotes, Yun Ruian began. The poisons on the Qinyuan continent are too vicious and difficult to guard against. I'll have to carry all sorts of antidotes with me just in case. Antidotes aren't easy to refine, Qiuqiu replied. In order to refine antidotes, one must first know how to refine poisons. The first thing Yun Ruoyan thought of was the book in Qiuqiu's possession. So Qiuqiu. Yun Ruoyan smiled obsequiously. Have you decided to teach me how to refine poisons? I do, Qiuqiu replied. But your current pillmaster rank isn't high enough. Only when you're a 5th rank pillmaster will you be able to refine poisons from the book. You can't compromise on that. Yun Ruoyan's obsequious smile immediately turned into a disappointed sigh. Qiuqiu continued, just because you can't refine poisons from the book doesn't mean that you can't refine other poisons, mistress. I can first teach you how to refine some simple poisons to protect yourself. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.